Bosch FC Cup victory over Polokwane City. And in MotoGP, Marc Marquez is flying for Ducati before the MotoGP season. All these stories and more at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Today is Friday, the 14th of February 2025. Good morning and welcome to it, the Friday edition of The Morning Brief on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. Well, it's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day to you, my friends. If you do celebrate the day, I hope you have a great day and you receive, what is truly special to you. I hope that it's coming your way, it's making its way. And those who need to be inquiring about your physical address have done exactly that, and they know where exactly to deliver that special package on Valentine's Day. Coming up on the show over the next 3 hours, we'll tell you this. The Gauteng Education MEC, Matume Chelwane, says his department is taking proactive steps to alleviate pressure on schools. You'll know at the start of every year, there's that pressure of placement in terms of where pupils are placed in schools. There's that difficulty, and it sort of settles after a few weeks in Gauteng, but some challenges do continue. This comes amid complaints of overcrowding in schools in the province. Chelwane says the department is addressing these challenges by building new schools, providing mobile classrooms, and expanding existing schools to ensure that every learner is placed in an appropriate learning environment. So the Gauteng Education MEC, Matume Chelwane, will talk to me just after 7 a.m. You and I know I've been wanting to talk to him for quite some time now about a few other issues that are affecting schools, including reports that some schools are having their electricity cut because the Gauteng Department of Education has simply not paid the bills that are due to Eskom and other utilities. So that conversation with Matume Chelwane coming up at just after 7 a.m. So the other story we'll bring you is this. Because our focus has been, almost exclusively on Donald Trump's executive order halting aid funding to South Africa and offering refugee status to some of the country's Afrikaners, we've possibly neglected the other, perhaps equally consequential executive orders that the man has been signing left, right, and center. And yes, many of them do affect us. So a less reported EO executive order that he signed on Tuesday this week pares down the powers of the FBI in terms of the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Why does this matter for you and I? Well, this is the act that has stood in the gap really at various points in our recent history and ensured a semblance of justice for corruption where our own law enforcement agencies were dithering and sometimes captured. So it's been put to good use. If I give you an example, put to good effect in holding U.S. companies accountable for their role in corruption, in corrupting officials in South Africa and among other countries, of course, going all the way back to the arms deal and most recently the state capture cases. It's been put to good effect even in those instances. So at 7:20, I'll be in conversation with Corruption Watch's Janine Erasmus about how we are going to feel the impact of this tampering with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and particularly the powers of the FBI as far as that act goes. Then we'll tell you the story. A coalition of healthcare professionals is proposing an alternative to the country's national health insurance system, right? There's been all this debate about the NHI. The act was signed into law by President Cyril Ramaphosa, but contention has not gone away. I mean, as late as last week, we were reporting contradictory reports with the one minister saying that there has been some kind of a deal, Marupini Ramokgopa, saying there's been some kind of an agreement with the coalition partners in government, the DA, and only for that to be rejected by the Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi. So this coalition of healthcare professionals are arguing that the NHI is unworkable and destined for failure. So they are proposing interventions that start by recognizing that a 100% tax-funded healthcare system is impossible in any future fiscal scenario. At 6:50, 10 to 7, I'll be talking to Professor Alex van den Heever about their proposals. But get this, here's a sense of what it includes. It would rely on both tax funding and the contributory system, so something similar to medical aid as we have it right now at the moment. So the proposals say healthcare for the poor would be tax funded and free as it is now, whereas higher income groups would be compelled, underline that, would be compelled to pay contributory insurance through medical aid schemes. I'm wondering, in your mind, would these proposals work? But also, I've just been wondering, do you, sitting where you are sitting and listening to all this wrangling about the national health insurance, have a clear sense of what the disputes are about? Do you have a clear sense? Do you understand? Do you know what is problematic about the NHI, and to the extent that you believe that it is problematic? Has that been explained enough, or why it is not problematic? I mean, I had a conversation a few months ago with the health minister, Aaron Motsoaledi. But I can tell you now, even to this day, I still battle, other than hearing that it's not been budgeted for and him saying that, yeah, but you can't budget for something that you're going to be implementing for a lifetime. I honestly can't tell you off the back of my hand, off the top of my head, what the actual problems are with the NHI. Do you understand them? Share with me your understanding of what the problems are, but also this concept of potentially having compulsory medical aid contributions for higher income earners, so that working hand in hand with tax-funded, healthcare for the poor. Then lastly, let me tease out this for you. A conversation I will have with Richard Mamabolo of the trade union Pop Crew about proposals that have been made by the chairperson of the Safety Portfolio Committee in Gauteng, Dr. Bandile Masuku, who's basically proposing two things. One, rotating police station commanders across the province to try and push back against corruption. So the idea being that if you move them around, and some police officers, if you move them around in the province, the opportunity to build relationships, corrupt relationships, may be in a way, sort of averted. The second one, he's proposing body cams for police officers to enhance accountability. What do you think? Would that work in your view to try and reduce police corruption? So that conversation coming up at 8:45 with Richard Mamabulo of Pop Crew. The regulars, all of them locked and loaded for you once again this morning. And Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zai Khan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. Sipho Mantula is taking a bit of a breather today, but Lerato Tsebe will have your Africa update, and that's coming up just before 8 a.m. And of course, on all these issues and others, your calls to 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Valentine's Day edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Hey, good morning, Anne.
Good morning. I'm giggling. Valentine's Day edition.
Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Well, thank you to you too.
Have you received your package, or is it still...
Sure, I'm not even hopeful.
Surprise.
Hey,
The dinner.
I'm not hopeful.
The roses. What's on the diary this morning? I heard you giving Valentine's Day advice, by the way.
Yeah, to
You've gotta
those,
try.
Some out there, just remembering the days about love and appreciation, not only to your partner, man, it
Yeah.
can be to family, your parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's on your diary this morning?
President Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday responding to the debate on his State of the Nation address, and also presided over the handover of the mortal remains of the SNDF members who who lost their lives in the DRC, saying that the decision to deploy our armed forces is not taken lightly, particularly when that deployment may put the Defence Force members in harm's way. Large parts of Johannesburg have been battling with water shortages for weeks now, and the High Court in Johannesburg affected yesterday. The DA in Gauteng is calling on the Infrastructure Minister, Dean McPherson, to consider including municipalities in the province in his infrastructure support program to tackle water infrastructure challenges. The Rea Vaya bus operation suspended in Johannesburg, and this is amid safety concerns, and this decision comes just about 2 weeks after 2 Rea Vaya feeder bus drivers were shot and killed in Soweto. In court, the High Court in Thohoyandou delivering judgment on the multiple murder accused Enokondo, who's accused of killing 7 family members at Jimmy Jones Village on Christmas Day in 2021. Judgment in the bail application case of the couple accused of the distribution and possession of over 10 million images and videos of child pornography expected to be handed down at the Randburg Magistrates Court today. And also an update on the bail application by the 4 men accused of torching 51 Patco buses at depots in Mpumalanga's Nkangala district 2 weeks ago. Some of the stories that we are focusing on this morning.
All right, thank you for that, Anne. That's Anne Musa. She'll keep you updated with your news updates every half hour here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So here's what you can expect on the weather front for this Friday. We start with one warning. It's a yellow level 2 warning. It says disruptive rainfall leading to localized flooding of susceptible areas, roads, bridges and dirt roads. That is expected over the northwestern and northern parts of Limpopo. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated thunder showers from the afternoon with a minimum of 18 and a maximum of 28. Johannesburg will be cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated thunder showers from the afternoon with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 26. Mbombela will be cloudy with isolated showers in the morning, 20 to 26. Polokwane cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 19 to 23. Mahikeng cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 19 to 30. Bloemfontein will be fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 18 to 32. Kimberley fine, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon, 19 to 35. Cape Town will be fine, 18 to 23. George partly cloudy, 16 to 22. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy, becoming fine from late morning, 18 to 25. East London will be cloudy with rain in the morning, 19 to 24. Durban will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 21 to 30. Richards Bay partly cloudy, 22 to 32. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will be cloudy with morning fog, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers, 15 to 33.
It's 2025, aka 2020 Thrive. And from January to December, we're managing our expenses better, even in the month of love. Whatever personal expenses or aspirations you have, make them happen now with a Nedbank personal loan of up to 400,000 Rand and enjoy our best available interest rate.
Search Nedbank personal loans and show your goals some love. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Masandawana want to display their elite status with a graduation letter to the last 8. However, lower division team, Mpeni Home Defenders, are seeking to make history and join the league of giant killers. This is the Nedbank Cup Ross 16. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Mpeni Home Defenders on Sunday, 16 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes after 6. The U.S. President Donald Trump has announced plans to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Saudi Arabia to discuss peace negotiations regarding Russia's ongoing war with Ukraine. This move follows a recent phone call between the two leaders, which could mark a turnaround in U.S.-Russia relations, which were believed to have gone cold recently. But on Thursday, Ukraine and its European allies demanded that they be included in any peace negotiations. Let's speak now to Stephen Gruzd, who is the head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Good morning to you, Stephen, and thank you for your time. So this phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, I had to go and check it from the Kremlin, because with Donald Trump, there's always that extra additional, embellishment, such that you really don't really know what was discussed. But it's fair to say that they are on the same page about the possibility of a settlement and continuing to engage, including in-person meetings. How significant is that planned in-person meeting between the two leaders?
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. It's very significant. During the Biden administration, there were no direct communication between Biden and Putin. There certainly wasn't a meeting. And one of Trump's many campaign promises was that he was going to bring this war to an end. He said in one day. Obviously, that's proved impossible. But he does believe that the sides are ready to talk. And he sees himself as this great deal maker. And that he can forge a peace where nobody else has really had the clout to be able to do so. I don't think it's going to be a peace that Ukraine's going to like very much, because the indications are that the two main demands of Russia would be met. One, that Kiev would never join NATO, and two, that the territory that has been taken since 2014 and again after 2022 would not revert back to Ukraine, would remain Russian. Now, we don't know all the details of that. We don't know if that's actually what would be the terms of the deal, but it looks very likely that Russia's two key demands in that respect would be met, which leaves Ukraine in a very awkward position.
Yeah. Do you think, Stephen, that that's partly why, as I was reading this account from the Kremlin of the phone call, do you think that's partly why the Kremlin is somewhat enthusiastic about this particular meeting, because of those two issues, particularly the NATO issue?
Absolutely. It gets everything that it wants. The big remaining question is are there security guarantees for Ukraine that it won't be invaded or attacked by Russia in the future? And also for Ukraine, it seems like Trump's gone over Zelensky's head and straight to Putin. He did phone Zelensky afterwards, but it's almost like we were back in the 1820s when the balance of power system existed in Europe, and the big powers talked about international issues that affected smaller countries without that country being in the room.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about that. How likely is it that a sustainable agreement can be brokered on terms not favorable to Ukraine at the very least, or at worst to Ukraine's exclusion in the negotiations?
Yeah, I think the real question is, what does this mean for the future? How could it prevent further wars of this nature? Because it does seem, although there's been some backtracking by the Defense Secretary, that those two conditions would be met, and Ukraine would then be left vulnerable. And one of the big things that it's asking for is guarantees from the West, from NATO, that it will never be attacked again. I think Ukraine is coming in from a position of weakness on the battlefield, despite the stories that we've been told and heard for the last year or so. The counteroffensive that it mounted was very insignificant. Yes, it does hold some Russian territory, but really, Putin and Trump hold all the cards here.
And is there any significance to the staging of this meeting in Saudi Arabia under the leadership of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS? What do we glean into that? Saudi Arabia's role in these geopolitics and these global issues.
Yes. Well, firstly, it's fairly significant that it's in neither Washington nor Moscow. So it's not on the home turf of either the US or the Russians. Saudi Arabia indeed is playing a huge role in the Middle East. It's a strong American ally and has an interest in expanding its influence in the world. I don't know whether an offer has been made by MBS or whether this was just something that came out from Trump's readout of the call, but perhaps somewhere that's more neutral as a venue. But yes, it does indeed signify the importance of Saudi Arabia in global politics at the moment.
And I did see a report that says Vladimir Zelensky could possibly meet with J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President, at the Munich Security Summit.
Yes.
Is that significant, or is it mere appeasement to say, we're not entirely ignoring you while we're having these conversations?
Yeah. Well, Putin got to talk to the president. Zelensky gets to talk to the vice president. It's not insignificant. It's not that Ukraine is being totally left out, but he isn't speaking directly. He isn't. He did speak to Trump yesterday, but today he will meet Vance, and they'll put their positions forward. But in the symbolism of diplomacy, it's one thing to meet the president, but it's a lower kind of status to meet the vice president.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. Stephen Gruzd is the head of the Africa-Russia project at the South African Institute of International Affairs.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, so I was asking you a bit earlier on about the proposals and asking you whether you understand at all what this contention about the national health insurance really is about, and the proposal that has been advanced by these healthcare professionals who are gathered together in a coalition to propose alternatives to fixing the NHI. Let me take a listen to one or two of your voice notes and hear what you've had to say.
Thulis, good morning. Thulis, this NHI drives me insane. We pay the highest tax in the world, and I'll tell you right now, when this ends up in the Constitutional Court, it'll be kicked out. So working South Africans pay a huge percentage of tax that already goes to the government hospitals. Anybody can go to a government hospital. It's already self-funded. Why don't they rather come out and say they can't run it properly, it's corrupt, it's a mess, and it needs a private sector to come and no, let's rather tax the small tax base more, which is actually illegal. You're paying twice. And like I said, it's going to end up in the Constitutional Court and get kicked out. It's just another failed ANC disaster. Brad Marisburg.
Brad, thank you for that. Well, you sum it up from your perspective, and I accept that. I was saying a bit earlier on that I've listened to many explanations about where the contention comes from. So at least from your side, Brad, you get what the contention is taxing people who have already been taxed, the small tax base. So I don't know, maybe your thoughts about what is being proposed now, that those who earn a bit higher under this proposal by these healthcare professionals would be compelled to take up medical insurance, whereas the rest of the South African population who are not high-income earners would then benefit from a tax-funded system. Thank you for that. We will, of course, be in conversation with Professor Alex van den Heever, and that's about 10 to 7 to unpack what their proposals are. But for now, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa says government takes seriously the concerns various members of parliament have raised over the deployment of SNDF members to the DRC. He, however, says South Africa has an important role to play in safeguarding peace in Africa. Some Johannesburg residents have taken to social media to complain about the water crisis in the city. In response, Johannesburg Water says it's looking into the matter. And US President Donald Trump has repeated his threats to impose sweeping taxes on imports from other countries, saying America's allies are often worse than its enemies on trade. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Crash on Joburg's N3 North at Van Buren. So just some extra delays pushing back past Cement Factory and back into Eland's interchange. You're coming out of Germiston and Alberton on your way through Galulis this morning. A little bit busier than you might be expecting. The Ollie Fontaine Road out of Blue Hills held up. Traffic lights down at Lever Road. Those lights have been off for like the longest time. So no change this morning. Just already getting fairly heavily backlogged. Protesting Eastern Cape KZN region. Mount Aleph through to Cockstad on the N2. Just watch for some delays there. And Cape Town, some early morning protests on the N2 outbound just by the airport runway. Police are on the scene, all lanes are open, but there's a bit of an extra delay coming in from Khayelitsha on the N2 inbound towards the airport area, and that's due to the onlooking factor. And Baden-Powell Drive, quite slow already. It backs up every morning coming through from Mitchell's Plain down towards the Strandfontein Junction, and M7 out of Mitchell's Plain, quite heavy as you queue up towards the R300. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
So, Zai, good morning to you. Yesterday we were talking about, that mutual respect, Steve Barker being humble and saying, no, Polokwane, watch them. He knew all along what he was working on, didn't he?
Oh, that man is smooth, Tula. Smooth like a fine wine, I must say. And speaking of wine, I think they just squeezed Polokwane like sour grapes last night. It was a 2-0 that score. Yes, all happened at Danny Craven Stadium. Now, the opener came in the 13th minute, though, not from a Stellenbosch boot. It was the Polokwane captain, Bulelani Nkani, turning the ball into his own net after Kazi Godwill's cross, causing some chaos there in the box. But the night belonged to Devon Titus. He had goals and delivered quite a gold of goals, a stunning strike from the edge of the area. And watching from the stands was the Bafana boss, Hugo Bruges, as well as Helman Mkalele, making notes ahead of March's World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho. Let's hear now from the Stellis Bosch. That's Mr. Barker himself.
I thought we were really good first half and probably should have got more than what we did. It's always nice when the national coach is also in the stands and gives the players a little bit of a boost. And I thought Devon took his goal really well. It's a little bit unlucky when he got through maybe to get the second then. And but good all-round performances. I think the starting 11 were really good and solid. It's nice to have some players back from sort of suspensions and injuries. I think it does show when there's just that maturity, in the fullback positions. It did help us a lot. Overall, good evening.
And it was a good evening for Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce. They won 3-0 at home to Anderlecht in the first leg of the Europa League knockout phase playoff tie, while Real Sociedad, they triumphed 2-1 away to Midtjylland. Now, Mourinho won the competition with Porto in 2003 and again with Manchester United in 2017, and also reached the final when he was in charge of Roma. That was 2 years ago. Now, Ajax, they took charge of their playoff against Belgian outfit Union Saint-Gilloise with a 2-0 victory in Brussels. And we also had Ferencváros won 1-0 against Victoria Pleasant. And in the UEFA Conference League, the Irish side, Shamrock Rovers, securing a 1-0 win away to the Norwegian side, Molde. And tennis action, the 3-time defending champion Iga Swiatek advancing to the semi-finals of the WTA Qatar Open with straight sets was her win over last year's runner-up Elena Rybakina. The second-seed Swiatek staved off a fight back from the fifth-seed Kazakh in the second set to win through 6-2, 7-5. Now, Ekaterina Alexandrova continued her impressive form against the 6th seed, the American Jessica Pegula, 4-6, 6-1, 6-1, having eliminated the world number 1 Arina Sabalenka in the second round, did Alexandrova. And after the exits of Rybakina and Pegula, Swiatek is the last survivor amongst the Doha seeds. And golf news, Jacques Blau, he beat the weather as well as fading light to post a 9-under par 63 for the clubhouse lead on a difficult opening day of the Pro-Am at Fancourt. Heavy rain forced a lengthy suspension on the first round of the Sunshine Tour and co-sanctioned tournament, resulting in 2 restarts as the 3 golf courses of the links, Montague and Otaniqua, recovered from the downpour. And finally, motorsport news. The 6-time Spanish world champion Marc Marquez set the fastest lap in the second of 2 days of pre-season testing at the Buriram circuit in Thailand with 1 minute 28.855 seconds. The session comes 2 weeks ahead of the start of the 2025 MotoGP season. Marquez came out on top ahead of his brother Alex Marquez, who clocked 1 minute 29.034 seconds, and the Italian Marco Bezzecchi with a time of 1 minute 29.06 seconds. And that's your sport. We'll be revving up at the top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan for the Morning Brief.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you, Ntauleng, for our first update. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tell me about Britain's economy, slightly expanding in Q4. The government, they will like that very much, won't they?
They really do. But if we're being quite honest, the growth is really, really tepid. Nothing to be quite happy about. That economy growing 0.1% in the last quarter of 2024.
That's okay. You know, that's a South African trend.
Kind of growth.
Yeah, that's it.
I guess the happiness comes from that it beat expectations. In the third quarter, it didn't grow at all, and expectations were that it would decline 0.1% in the fourth quarter. Now, the growth was driven by growth recorded in December when the economy there expanded by 0.4%. Now, while this was higher than expectations, economists warn that the economy is not out of the woods just yet, citing weak domestic demand and a decline in business investment. The growth seen in December was mainly driven by government spending and temporary build-up in company inventories. Last week, the Bank of England commented on the state of the economy, halving its growth forecast for this year to 0.75%. Policymakers further said they would do whatever they can to boost growth, suggesting that they could cut rates further this year. The government, in the meantime, has pledged to remove regulatory barriers and boost confidence, but faces challenges, including weak demand in Europe and rising energy costs. The opposition parties have criticized the government's handling of the economy, saying that the fall in GDP per capita amounts to a recession in living standards.
So Honda and Nissan, that didn't last long, did it? I mean, it was only recently when I said, Ntauleng, this is coming. Honda, Nissan, that's ended now, these major talks.
That's right. They finally confirmed it because last week we had these reports coming out, and last night they actually confirmed that they've scrapped merger talks. The tie-up would have created the world's third largest auto company. Merger talks, as you mentioned, were quite short-lived. They began in December with the goal of sharing resources, achieving economies of scale, and protecting both brands. But negotiations stalled due to Nissan's concerns over its autonomy and Honda's proposal to make Nissan a subsidiary. The failed merger was reportedly due to Nissan's reluctance to close factories and Honda's push for deeper staff cuts. Now, Nissan's market cap is nearly 5 times smaller than that of Honda, which is about $48.6 billion. A decade ago, the pair were both worth around $30 billion. Now, economists and analysts say that Honda's proposal made sense in that sense, considering that the market cap of Nissan has shrank. Now, while talks collapsed, it reported that both firms will continue looking at pursuing a strategic partnership focused on EVs. The announcement in the meantime comes alongside Honda's quarterly earnings, the group delivering tepid growth, to be quite honest, revenue increasing 1.4%, while operating profit rose 4.6%.
So they flirted and courted, but could not even get to Valentine's Day.
Couldn't. They just missed it. They could have just at least kept it going until the end of the week.
Darling, please give us our first market roundup for the morning.
So U.S. stocks making a turnaround overnight, closing in positive territory. Traders returning to riskier assets, boosted by news that U.S. President Donald Trump's latest reciprocal tariffs would not likely be implemented until April, giving time for negotiations. The tech-heavy Nasdaq making the most gains on that front, up 1.5% by the close. The mood, however, different on the local front, with markets mixed. Local traders monitoring global moves while digesting a disappointing mining production report. The all share losing 0.1% in yesterday's close. Not much action playing out in the currency markets, with the rand remaining range bound, trading at 18.48 to the dollar this hour. And then over in Asia, markets are also mixed, but mostly in the green. Stocks, of course, being influenced by global peers as Wall Street ticked higher yesterday.
All right, Ndauling Lechala, thank you. Ndauling will be back with more of those insights for you, and that's coming up in the second update, and that's just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals, star white, Baba, and he owns 10 identical pairs. Before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance. Let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3, and see how one spin changed Billion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on healer.org. That's HEALA.org.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
All right, let's turn our attention to this story now. Recent incidents at Centenary High School in Durban and the Pretoria High School for Girls have thrust issues of racism in schools back into the spotlight. Shital Bula, who is an academic, says to address this, the school curriculum needs to include concepts of racial capitalism and social cohesiveness. Bula says another way to address racism in school will be through cultivating a culture that develops the concept of shared identity. We'll tease out all of these issues with Shital Bula, who joins us now in conversation. But good morning to you, Shital. Before we get into the concepts that you raise around racial capitalism, social cohesiveness, and a shared identity, let me ask you this. If Nelson Mandela talked about how no one is born hating another person for the color of their skin, and the current generation that is in school are definitely children born after the end of apartheid, why is it, in your understanding, that we continue to grapple with issues of racial tensions and racism in schools?
Good morning, and thank you for asking. I think it's a very important question, but I think it's also in terms of the current socialization and what we as a society is currently still experiencing and exposed to. I mean, a classic example is that because of the Group Areas Act, people are still living in previously apartheid designated residential suburbs, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Then you find also in our society, and research has indicated this, and I did make mention of the scholars as well that have done research pertaining to this, that interracial socialization is predominantly only happening in public spaces and not happening in private spaces. And it's also about the way we've been living. Then you've got, of course, we were trying to readdress injustices of the past with the BEE policies and so forth. There again as well, you've got a form of racial capitalization that has become a normative in our society. So there's a lot pointing towards the racial divide in our society.
So in a way, and in many ways, the children are a product of the society in which they live, a society that continues to manifest some of these divisions.
Absolutely. And not only that as well. I mean, we've got generational wealth where you find people of a certain race and a certain class category, children and generations as well are benefiting from the previous structures of inherited wealth and so forth as well. And largely also because the economic gaps are very, very wide. And they still are wide. And because of our past, they are also racially divided.
Mm. So tell me about these ideas now of how we address this. Tell me about infusing into the school curriculum racial capitalism and social cohesiveness. Is this not going to lead us down a path where, in the United States, they've been having these debates about critical race theory, that many states are criticizing. Is that the kind of thing you are suggesting?
Look, we've got to indicate to our youth, especially at school level, this is what the concept is. This is how we can and what we're experiencing as a society. At the same token as well, we should be bringing it across in such a way that it goes against social cohesiveness. It goes against sharing a shared identity. And it'll put light onto our past in the sense that, this is where we've come from. This is where we fought. We fought for equality. We fought for no discrimination, no racial prejudice. Why is it still acting out like this? And I think it comes down to critical thinking skills and how the concepts are introduced and encouraged and brought about for discussion amongst youth as well.
And is it possible?
For them, if they are mindful about it, I think also if it's done at the right interjection in the teenage years, children can also have the capacity, if they influence correctly, to extend themselves with integrating themselves at the school level, for instance, with meeting and socializing with people outside of the race group as well.
So is there a level of comfort, though, Shital, about addressing those issues as forthrightly as you are suggesting? And I'll tell you why I ask. A diversity trainer friend of mine in Cape Town a few years ago confronted a situation where she was accused of, oh no, you made the white children feel guilty about a past in which they did not participate instead of, grappling with current issues. So what I'm asking is, given the makeup of the localities, the locales where the schools are, you can have it in the curriculum, but what about where it's supposed to be delivered? Would we have that level of comfort and comfortability with tackling the subject matter head on without making one group feel like they're being attacked?
I think, the onus and the responsibility lies on the educator. And I think the department really needs to look at possibly a very specific skills training in terms of how to deliver and incorporate this into the curriculum. Because if it's not delivered and not articulatedly in the correct manner, it can arise all those issues. And people also, as human beings, we misinterpret, we misconceptualize, we misunderstand. So it's very integral in terms of the role the educator plays and how it's going to be incorporated in the curriculum. And I think that needs considerable academic intervention, development strategies, and it's not something that can be just done willy-nilly.
Yeah.
There needs to be a proper process involved. It needs to be stringent. It needs to be evaluated. It needs to be critiqued, and then it needs to be implemented. We are dealing with young mindsets here, and we're shaping the young mindsets, which are actually the future South Africans here that are going to be carrying this country forward.
Yeah.
So there needs to be considerable focus to give into that, and I don't believe that is not achievable. I think, yes, we've got a past, but the same token as well, the next generation shouldn't be carrying that forward with us.
Right. Lastly, Shital, one of your proposals really talks to something I'm quite passionate about, the understanding and awareness of key constitutional rights and anti-discrimination laws, as well as the consequences of racism and discrimination. How do you propose we infuse that into our children's education system, and what difference would it make?
I think number one, they are very unaware of the consequences should they go against constitutional rights, for instance. And I don't think, and I think, yes, if I look back at myself and going through the schooling system in the 90s, yes, it was mentioned. Yes, we know we were aware of the Constitution. But further than that, when it comes to human rights, human dignity, respect for fellow South Africans, there needs to be some sort of a special segment and focus on that, where its value is heightened, where its importance is given to that kind of segment, to say, you know what, this is what it takes. This kind of guidelines is there to shape the behavior of society, to shape the behavior of individuals so that we can be cohesive. So I think that can come through very easily and I think it's a far easier task than the previous one we just mentioned, because it is our Bill of Rights and it's already been enshrined. And I think the main importance that people are just not constantly reminded of it. This is what we want. This is what we fought for. This is our objective. Yeah. And I think sadly enough as well, somewhere along the line, everyone is caught up in their daily lives and we've lost focus on the bigger picture here and how we as individuals and how our behavior or lack of awareness of social cohesiveness does not contribute to a great South African society in the future.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. You've really, pricked our brains and got us thinking about some of these issues that we do need to grapple with. That's Shital Bula, who is the academic director at Stella Maths and an academic at the University of Zululand.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Pretoria. First up, Solomon, Mashlangu and Garsfontein. Those lights are down. Traffic is built up all approaches into that junction. The N4 driving into Pretoria. Another crash this morning on that high collision zone. It's either police roadblocks or collisions this time of the morning, but it is heavy. The crash just before you get to the N1 and the traffic parking back through Vartame. You might want to try Pretoria Street or Linwood Road running parallel as alternative roads. Breakdown at XX. So if you're coming out of Shoshanguve on the Mopari Highway, some delays there. Four ways, obviously very busy with all the traffic lights that are out. You see the same sort of deal with motorists queuing through North Riding, through Kaya Sands, through Sharon Lee, through Stratham Park, through Honeydew, through Rampart Ridge, across the highway into Fairland, all because of traffic light problems. The N3 North has a crash at Van Buren, so delays coming up from Elands Interchange, passing Cement Factory and up through the Hilton Ace Interchange territory. Durban this weekend, the closure of Spaghetti Junction goes back in. The N3 inbound to the N2 South will be closed from 2 p.m. on Saturday right through until the 2 a.m. Monday morning period. It was closed the same last weekend. It'll be closed this weekend, next weekend, and the first weekend in March as well. So more weekends of disruption there. Cape Town, the earlier protesting on the N2 between the airport runway and the R300, largely all dealt with. That traffic is moving normally. In fact, even the N2 inbound a little bit lighter this morning. And Marine Drive's already pretty heavy with queues from Bayside Mall down to Racecourse Road and the Paddocks Mall in the Milnerton area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Buccaneers want to demonstrate that they are the reigning champions and nothing will stop them from marching on to the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Bahaha have a different game plan to return to Hampatele with happy faces. This is the Nedbank Cup Last 16. Orlando Pirates FC tackles Baroka FC. This Saturday, 15 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
6 minutes to 7 on this Friday. A coalition of healthcare professionals has proposed an alternative to the country's national health insurance system. The healthcare practitioners argue that the NHI is unworkable and destined for failure. Under the name Universal Healthcare Access Coalition, the group has suggested a set of structural reforms that aim to improve public health care, quality and reduce the rising costs of medical aid schemes. Let's speak now to Professor Alex van den Heever, who is the Universal Healthcare Access Coalition Steering Committee member. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. Before we get into the details of your proposals, you move, if I understand correctly, you move from the premise that as it is now, the national health insurance is simply unworkable and bound to fail. Why is that?
Well, it requires that you shut down both the provincial health system and the medical scheme system and collapse it into a single national fund so that our universal coverage, or everybody's cover that is kind of guaranteed, will be provided by one tax-funded organization. So this is not regarded as feasible because there's no way in which our current expenditure will all be raised on healthcare is going to be raised by national taxes. Taxes are already, government is already at tax capacity, which means that if it increases taxes any further, it's actually going to reduce government revenue. So there's a ceiling on how much can be raised from taxation. So you cannot have a health system based in which the guaranteed healthcare that people have is provided entirely through a tax-funded system.
But the Minister of Health, Aaron Motsoaledi, denies that the NHI will have the effect of collapsing private healthcare medical aid schemes. He says actually there'll be complementarity because currently there are many areas of healthcare that the medical schemes don't cover, and it will be that coexistence that says, there's no duplication of coverage and functions.
So that's not what he's being said. It's not what the white paper has said. It's not what the intention of the framework was. It was to essentially say whatever is covered by the National Health Insurance Fund cannot be covered by a medical scheme. So that if you cover cancer treatment or oncology in the National Health Insurance framework, then medical schemes are not allowed to cover it. So essentially, pretty much everything that is regarded as quite crucial for coverage will not be possible through a medical scheme, and you'll have to get it through the state. So that is basically the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's quite clear what the intention is in relation to medical schemes.
So you've come up with these proposals as a coalition. They include reforms to both the public and private healthcare systems. How do you propose? Let's start first with that mix between tax-funded versus contributory insurance systems. How would that work under your proposals?
So essentially, we already have a pre-existing framework which incorporates both. But the problem is that in both of those sectors, both systems, there are weaknesses that need to be addressed. Now, these are well known. They have been identified now over many, many years in government reports, in official processes, including the private sector, the health market inquiry, which took 5 years. Not one of the reforms that are required to stabilize the private system have been implemented. Not one of the requirements to stabilize the public system have been introduced. They're proposing to rip up the provincial departments and basically centralize the funding of and purchasing of healthcare at the national level of government. You don't need to do that. We need to basically stop the corruption at the provincial level, which is really a governance reform. It's not an architectural reform in the system. So we're proposing in both environments and the reforms that are necessary to get both of these systems to start working effectively and to harmonize between the two of them.
And among the proposals that I found quite interesting, you're talking about high income groups being compelled to pay contributory insurance through medical aid schemes. How do you envisage that working?
So in essence, why that is a proposal is for a certain group of people, you don't want to have the option that they adopt, because you'll have to have free public health care. You might not be aware that public services are not actually universally free. There's a means test. So the higher income groups are effectively excluded from access to free public health care. They have to pay for it. And medical scheme members have to pay for it through their medical schemes. So the issue is really to retain the requirement that medical schemes pay for public services through their medical scheme. And what you don't want is when you've declared basically public sector services free, that you don't want people, if the services improve in the public sector, to just opt out of their contributory regime and move into the state. That's called anti-selection. So what you do is you compel them to be on a medical scheme, and if they use the public sector, then the medical scheme will pay for it because it's not really funded for them. So the issue is really to make sure that you don't have this unpredictable movement of people, a buy down into the state. That's typically why you'll have this structural intervention. And so it's necessary to preserve both the integrity of the medical scheme system and the financial position of the public sector.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Professor Alex van den Heever, who is the Universal Healthcare Access Coalition Steering Committee members. Brings us to 7 a.m. Let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
Our top stories. President Ramaphosa defends SANDF DRC deployment and Trump slams US trading allies. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government takes seriously the concerns various members of parliament have raised over the deployment of SANDF members to the DRC. He, however, says South Africa has an important role to play in safeguarding peace in Africa. 14 South African soldiers were killed in fierce fighting between the M23 rebels and the Congolese military in eastern DRC 2 weeks ago. Their remains were repatriated on Wednesday. Ramaphosa was speaking at the Air Force Base Swartkop in Pretoria last night during a handover ceremony and memorial service for the fallen soldiers.
We are a trusted country and a reliable country when it comes to peace building. We have succeeded in bringing peace and building peace in a number of countries on our continent. And yes, we have lost heroic soldiers in the course of doing so in many missions that our country has been and our soldiers have been involved in. This is one of those missions. The achievement of this vision is the most fitting tribute that we can pay to our fallen heroes and the greatest honor to their memories.
Some Johannesburg residents have taken to social media to complain about the water crisis in the city. In response, Johannesburg Water says it's looking into the matter. Yesterday, the DA in Gauteng called on the Infrastructure Minister, Dean McPherson, to consider including municipalities in the province in his infrastructure support program to tackle water infrastructure challenges. The party says the system status report Johannesburg Water published on Tuesday shows critical reservoir levels across multiple regions in the province. The city of Tshwane has assured residents of Hammanskraal, north of Pretoria, that it's trying to address their water problems. It has advised residents receiving water from the newly launched Klipdrift Magalies water package plant not to consume it following complaints of poor quality. The city says power disruptions caused water supply interruptions at the plant. It also impacted water quality. Mayoral spokesperson Zinhle Mahladi.
Immediate steps were taken by the city to flush the system of potential contaminants. This process was completed on 12 February 2025 and the water samples were subsequently sent for laboratory testing. The results are expected on Friday, 14 February 2025, and the city will provide residents with an update on the findings once they are available.
U.S. President Donald Trump has repeated his threats to impose sweeping taxes on imports from other countries, saying America's allies are often worse than its enemies on trade. Speaking in the Oval Office, he signaled out the European Union, whose policies he said had been brutal on U.S. exporters. Trump has cited the EU's value-added tax charge on all goods, as well as restrictions on U.S. agricultural products. The BBC's Ratika Gupta has the details.
In theory, the US would pose the same levies on imported goods from a given country that the other country imposes on their US imports. These would apply to all countries that generally have higher tariffs on average than the US, which Trump says will level the playing field. However, what's more complicated is that they will be customized for each country and include non-tariff barriers that limit US trade. These could include unfair subsidies, regulations, VAT, exchange rates, and other factors, which could take months to complete.
And finally, South Africans have joined their counterparts in other countries in celebrating Valentine's Day. The day originates from a Christian feast to honor a martyr named Valentine. It has now become a significant cultural, religious and commercial celebration of romance and love in many regions of the world. Lovers are expressing their affection with greetings and gifts. Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa says government takes seriously the concerns various members of parliament have raised over the deployment of SANDF members to the DRC. He, however, says South Africa has an important role to play in safeguarding peace in Africa. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Leap into February with this unbeatable deal from Outsurance. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. Make today the day you switch and save. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A couple of heavy delays in Pretoria this morning. The N4 going inbound a crash before the N1 highway. That's pushing a queue back beyond Watermeyer Street. Lights route Solomon, Mshlungu and Garsfontein. There's traffic all over that particular junction. Crash on the N3 at Van Buren still there, still causing delays coming out of Germiston and Alberton on the way through to Gililis. Bad news if you're on your way from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. I think you know what I'm going to say. It's the usual. The stationary truck at Cliffdale. Traffic queue building into a single lane section and pushing a backlog through towards Key Ridge. The regularity of those breakdowns in that roadwork is quite alarming. Cape Town this morning, a broken down vehicle on Ottery Road. Now, it's a very heavy queue heading west on Ottery Road towards the M5 highway, towards that breakdown. So if you want to avoid traffic, just stay off that route and pick an alternative route. And getting pretty busy as it has been this week into Stellenbosch, particularly this morning R304 from Kayamandi into Adam Tuss Central Stellenbosch. Very slow going. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. It is soccer. The Kaizer Chiefs head coach Nasruddin Nabi says one of the biggest priorities for next season is to sign a specialist and quality left back. And in rugby, the Stormers are ready to pounce when they face the Lions at Ellis Park. That's tomorrow. We'll have the details and more at around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 7 on this Friday. Welcome to it. This is the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's good to be in your company this morning. Coming up in this hour, we'll be in conversation with the MEC for Education in Gauteng, Matume Chilwane, and he'll be talking to us about efforts that are being made by his department to alleviate the problem of overcrowding in some schools in Gauteng. You will have seen a video on TikTok, if you are on that platform, where a teacher was talking about a ratio of about 53 learners in her class and basically expressing her frustration with the growing number of pupils as opposed to the resources and classrooms, and questions being asked about where the additional classrooms that were promised are. Matume Chilwane, the MEC on stand by to answer all of those questions with me in the next few minutes. Then I did say a bit earlier on that we will highlight and uplift one of the many. Donald Trump is busy, guys, and he sits there with his cocky pen, and I don't know why he uses a cocky pen. It's not a normal pen. So when he's signing these executive orders, you can hear the sound of the cocky pen hitting the piece of paper there and signing. One of those, because there's a plethora that he has signed, one of those actually has some kind of an impact that I believe you and I should be aware of. He's tempering the powers of the FBI in relation to the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Why does that matter for us? Because when chips were down in this country, when our own agencies did not seem to have, the wherewithal to prosecute and investigate all these allegations of corruption going as far back as the arms deal in 1999, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in the United States actually stepped in the gap, where U.S. companies were believed to be involved. Not only believed, many of them entered plea agreements with the Department of Justice because of this act. Now with the powers being tempered, what are the implications for you and I? So I'll be speaking to Janine Erasmus at about 20 past. Of course, in all of these conversations, I do welcome your inputs. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Valentine's Day edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned, and almost 100,000 businesses trust Outsurance.
I'm in tourism. I'm running a guest house here. When I switched over to Outsurance, it was very simple and convenient. I used the savings to subsidize my solar installations. Switching to Outsurance was one of the best decisions I made insurance-wise, yes.
For your business insurance, contact Outsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Oh, oui, Jessica. I Citroën you. You are my chérie de go. I am your wild track ranger.
What are you doing?
I'm just looking on WeBuyCars' website for what I'm getting you for Valentine's Day.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, they have a nationwide spin and win promotion where you can score a guaranteed prize of up to 10,000 Rand when you purchase a car.
Ooh, now that's romantic.
There's also hundreds of discounted auction vehicles available.
So what are we waiting for?
See you this Valentine's Day weekend at WeBuyCars, the easiest way to buy and sell a car by far.
We've upgraded. Our new GIS-linked national address database lets us connect with you better than ever before. By visualizing licensed and unlicensed households nationwide, we can ensure timely communication. Our payment reminders are a crucial tool to help you stay compliant and avoid penalties, empowering you to take proactive steps. Efficient electronic communication helps us collect fees seamlessly, bolstering the SABC's mandate in line with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act. TV licenses. Pay yours, make a difference.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
13 minutes after 7. Gauteng's Education MEC Matume Chilwane says his department is taking proactive steps to alleviate pressure on schools. This comes amid complaints of overcrowding in schools in the province. Chilwane says the department is addressing these challenges by building new schools, providing mobile classrooms, and expanding existing schools to ensure that every learner is placed in an appropriate learning environment. He joins me now to take that conversation forward. Good morning to you, MEC. I believe you probably would have seen, the latest iteration of the frustration around overcrowding in schools in the form of a teacher who took to TikTok to record a video about how she's having to make means and take grade R, desks and chairs and put those into the grade 1 classroom to accommodate 53 learners. And at the end of that, the teacher asks, why does our government not seem to take education seriously? Your answer to her question.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners. Yes, it's Valentine. Happy Valentine's as well. I do really sympathize with the educator, and yes, I did see the video, and And your concern is correct and noted. Remember what we've always been saying consistently as a department. For instance, that there are areas where we'll receive high pressure areas, and high school is one of those areas where we do have high pressure areas. But however, we have made provision to address that, meaning that we are in a process of supplying mobiles to alleviate that particular pressure that is experienced in that school, as well as a number of schools. We've set up satellites, which we're currently concluding. Not all of them are up. So in the interim, we have placed some learners in certain schools so that they can continue to get teaching and learning to resume. However, as soon as we conclude that infrastructure work in the satellites and also the supplied mobiles, in the next few weeks, before end of February, the situation would have been different in the teacher school as well as in some of the schools, because the satellites would then be up and the pressure will be less. And remember, the biggest challenge we experience is Gauteng. For instance, on the first day of the academic year, we received almost 16,000 new learners that we didn't know where they come from. Just arrived at our doorstep, and that was for just 2 grades, grade 1 and 8. I'm not even speaking about in between grades.
Sure.
So we can plan, but it's a moving target. You can't really determine how many learners you get. And then on the first day, you get these 15,000 learners. They rock up at your schools and say, "We want space."
Yeah. So
yes.
What is your understanding of the learner-teacher ratio across the province in Gauteng, but specifically in those areas that you say are high-pressure areas? I don't imagine that 53 is the worst that you will get in the province. There are probably schools where it's even higher.
No, in terms of provisioning for teachers, we do provide, as we comply with the law in terms of legislation, in terms of ratio 1:40 and 1:35. We do comply. So the issue will be, in some instances, the choice of subjects. For instance, if you go to a school, you find that one class, in that class, maybe, for example, home language, and the school has got more Zulu speakers, Zulu learners who are doing Zulu than those who are doing Sepedi. So during the period of home language, you go to Sepedi, you find 20 or 15 learners. But you go to the Zulu classroom, you find that it's quite high. But if you look at the teacher ratio component compared to the learners, the school complies holistically. And those are so those are some of the challenges we experience. But however, the concern that is raised by parents and educators at this moment, we are aware and we are in the process of resolving it. I can't say that there are schools that are not experiencing this type of situation. And that's because there's a delay in some instances in delivery of this temporary structure or mobiles, as well as, and obviously that will affect as well as furniture.
Yeah.
Yes.
So while you talk about a delay, MSC, the DA is Sergio Dos Santos in Gauteng says there's about 4,000 satellite schools that were promised in order to deal with this very issue. And they await your response as to the status of those 4,000 satellite schools. Where are they?
That's the problem with, having MPLs who don't read. I've never said we've got 4,000 satellite. We don't even have 4,000 schools. So I get worried when people don't understand when you released it. We said we're adding 4,000 classrooms.
Yeah.
Not schools.
Yes.
So when we say 4,000 classrooms, we're adding through mobiles, through the provision of new schools. We're adding through a self-build program. So that's what we mean. Self-build is when we give the school money to build additional classrooms. Yes. Now, that's what we're talking about, that we are adding 4,400 additional classrooms in the system through this multi-pronged approach, not 4,000 schools.
I see.
And yes, it's a process that's been undertook, and we are doing well. I think in that regard, we have rolled out, for instance, mobiles are quite a number. They've really rolled out in the previous year. We rolled out almost 1,005. mobile classrooms already. And also self-build is continuing, and also there are new schools that we are busy launching. I mean, I opened one now. I'm going to open another one before end of the month. I'm going to do another 4 or 5 before the term ends. So that classroom spaces are coming up. They're coming up swiftly, because we do understand the aspect and the pressure that we are experiencing.
Just on this school build program, and I know that the Department of Infrastructure Development undertakes that function on your behalf, but you work very closely. I have this impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the rate at which you were building schools a few years ago has slowed down currently. And I suspect that it may have to do with the budget cuts that all of us have been talking about. Am I correct in my suspicion?
You're correct that it is really, really slowed down. Look, it's a concern. I think the Department of Infrastructure has really not come to the party at all. I have to be very frank. They need to do more, and this is not something that is recent. At some point, we were able to build about 28 new schools a year, and that number drastically reduced to about 1 or 2 or 3 a year. So there is some issues there, but they are still our primary implementing agent. So they have put plans in place, and so far where I'm sitting is from the perspective of education, I can see them turning around the corner, where more schools are going to start coming up.
Yeah.
Because we did put pressure and we did find alternatives. Remember, we're also using DBSA to build some of our schools.
Yeah.
When we realized they were delaying as an implementing agent, we're also looking at other ones, IDT, etc., to help us really build this infrastructure that we need so desperately.
MEC, thank you for that candid answer. I could tell. I mean, you observe these things just as a citizen. You see that there was a rate at which schools were being built, and it's just not the same anymore. That's MEC Matume Chelwane, who is the Gauteng MEC for Education.
Whether you're having a morning or a morning, you woke up like this or like this. Mornings love McDonald's. So choose happy and enjoy a short filter coffee for only R14.90 at McDonald's. What's not to?
The Yellow Guys have a top-class plan to play elite rugby to remain in the top 5. But second-place Giants, the Red and Blacks are undoubtedly chasing the first position. This is the top 14. Clermont-Auvergne collides with Stade Thulasizwe on Sunday, 16 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
25-year-old Chanel loves Outsurance Essential because it's low-cost insurance designed for older cars. For her 2012 Hyundai i10 1.2, she only pays 458 Rand a month. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million Rand liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million Rand. Add even more value with the motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 Rand. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So the U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday signed an executive order pausing enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA. The act is a federal law that prohibits U.S. citizens and entities from bribing foreign government officials to benefit from their business interests. The pause has sparked backlash from anti-corruption groups, which argue that weakening the FCPA will empower wrongdoers and harm global efforts against corruption. Take a listen to the audio of Donald Trump when he was signing that executive order.
It sounds good on paper, but in practicality, it's a disaster. It means that if an American goes over to a foreign country and starts doing business over there, legally, legitimately, or otherwise, it's almost a guaranteed investigation, indictment, and nobody wants to do business with the Americans because of it. Nobody wants to do business. They say, look, we can deal with China. They can do whatever they want. We can deal with Russia. We can deal with anybody. And we have a normal life. You deal with America, the FBI gets over there. They don't investigate death and murders on the street in New York and Los Angeles. They go over and investigate a business guy trying to do business. So it made it very, very hard from a practical standpoint to make deals. They want to deal with the Americans, but they don't want to be under investigation every time they speak to an American, every time an American makes a phone call to somebody in a different country. It's a disaster for this country. And I guess it was a Jimmy Carter concept, and it sounds so good, but it's so bad. It hurts the country, and many, many deals are unable to be made because of it. Nobody wants to do business because they don't want to feel like every time they pick up a phone, they're going to jail. So we'll sign this, and it takes courage to sign it because you only get bad publicity when you sign it. It sounds so nice. The title is so lovely, but it's an absolutely horror show for America. So we're signing it because that's what we have to do to make it good.
Yeah, so for good measure, we left in that sound of that cocky pen hitting the piece of paper the way he was signing. Let's speak now to Janine Erasmus, who is the website editor at Corruption Watch. Good morning to you, Janine, and thank you for your time. Why does this matter to South Africans? It's a U.S. law, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Why does it hit us? Why does it affect us?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, it does affect us in several ways. One of the main effects that we are going to see is that it's going to have implications for our state capture investigations because several of them do rely on international cooperation. And we know that to follow the money, you sometimes have to go across the border, because people move money between countries, they move money between continents, and this is to obscure the location of that money. So this is why international cooperation is very important. We need to be able to cooperate with law enforcement agencies in other countries, and this is why the FCPA is a vital tool, because any of the countries in which the bribery or the transfer of bribe money happens can conduct their own prosecutions as well and enforce the matter as well as the main FCPA investigation. This is going to impact South Africa in other ways, probably because US-listed companies might feel less constrained in their South African operations. They might not feel that they have to comply so much with compliance programs or policies and internal controls. They might reduce their compliance investigations. It could impact the voluntary disclosure of violations that these companies have to make. And, it's basically it's bad news in terms of the international enforcement of anti-corruption policies.
And we had already seen how effective this act can be, Janine. There are a number of cases that you cite as Corruption Watch in your reaction to this news. Just give a sense of where we've seen it in action in cases relating to South Africa.
Well, the most recent one is the SAP the SAP. I suppose we could call it the matter. It's listed. It's a German-based company, but it's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and therefore it's subject to the FCPA because the FCPA applies even to foreign companies as long as if they are listed on any stock exchange in the US or if they use US banking systems. So SAP was subject to the FCPA. They admitted to paying bribes in South Africa. It involved improper payments to Gupta Link companies. This is obviously during the height of state capture, and it led to the loss of a lot of money for South Africa, but in a good way. It led to internal reforms at SAP. It created pressure for corporate compliance, and SAP was fined over $220 million because of this. There are quite a lot of other cases. There's one that cropped up at the State Capture Commission, which is the Julian Ayres case involving SAA and SA Express. They also were involved in a kickback scandal. The contract was shrouded with irregular processes. There was bidder favoritism. There was possible corruption, and this was exposed at the State Capture Commission. There was an investigation done, and the FCPA secured a conviction in August 2024. It was the first state capture-related conviction for us in South Africa. So, we really need this FCPA in order to help us, secure these convictions.
All right, thank you for coming through for this conversation. Really important one. That's Janine Erasmus, who is the website editor at Corruption Watch. And by the way, as a passing comment, did you hear there in the clip that we played where Trump was talking about when an American does business legitimately, legally, or otherwise? The otherwise, that's the part that's interesting, that he's making provision for Americans doing business abroad otherwise, other than legally and legitimately. Anyway. And Musa on standby with your latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, Defence analyst Dean Wingren says it's crucial to make sure the South African soldiers that are still in the DRC are safe. Political parties have intensified their calls for the withdrawal of the SANDF members from the DRC. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government takes seriously the concerns various members of parliament have raised over the deployment of SANDF members to the DRC. And some Johannesburg residents have taken to social media to complain about the water crisis in the city. In response, Johannesburg Water says it's looking into the matter. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very interesting traffic patterns across Joburg this morning. The highways are not too bad, with the exception of the Mike 1 going up through Crown, which you won't beat. There's also, just before you get there, in fact, there's a crash at Ormonde. So coming up from Uncle Charlie's, that Mike 1 queues into Xavier crash and then just sit in that congested route through Crown. The other issue is the N3, a collision at Van Buren, which has been with us quite a while. Very heavy coming up from Eland's Interchange. But the real issue, of course, is getting out of those really busy sort of northwestern suburbs. Hadijun, Kaya Sand, Rand Park Ridge, Four Ways, Magalisak, lights down all over the show, including this morning, Winnie Mandela and Sloane. Now, when that goes down, that's a problem because the bridge backs up on Winnie Mandela across the highway, and then the highway off-ramps back up, and that's exactly what we're seeing this morning. Lights are out, Pretoria East, Solomon, Mshlungu, and Garsfontein. That's pretty heavily backed. Durban to Pietermaritzburg. What a disaster this N3 is these days, and it's such a busy route. It's two stationary trucks in the roadworks this morning, both between Cliffdale and Hammersdale. And net result is the same. It's a heavy queue right back to almost Shongweni, back past Key Ridge, almost back to Shongweni. So if you're on your way to Pietermaritzburg, a quick reroute up through sort of Botha's Hill and Drummond, come back on it in Chunga. It's a very busy area there because you've got the N3 and the M13 after they've merged, running into those obstructions. Cape Town today, the earlier protesting on the N2, outbound to the airport runway. That's all sorted some time ago. R300 is a standout this morning, queuing up from Delft towards the Old Powell Road exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you once again, Zai. So Nasruddin Nabi has been doing a bit of diagnosis, and he believes he has found the Achilles heel of the Kaizer Chiefs defense. And it's not good news for you if you are a current left back at Kaizer Chiefs, right?
Absolutely, yes. Nabi says to us, no parking the bus, and yes, you better watch out for that position. The head coach says his top priority is signing a specialist left back, and he's been relying on makeshift options like Ditlokwe this season. Despite missing out on Andre Cruz, Nabi is determined to strengthen the defense. Offense, however, also remains part of the game plan, and insisting that a club like Chiefs should dominate every match. Let's listen to the Kaizer Chiefs head coach Nasruddin Nabi.
C'était fragile, il y a des choses qu'on a acquis bien, des choses qu'on n'a pas encore acquis au niveau de projet. Mais je pense généralement on est dans la bonne voie.
If there is an opportunity or transfer window, get the opportunities to strengthen the team. We feel that we are in the right way, even if we were not we were not consistent because we feel that, for example, we should have had like a left back that is a specialist in his position. The one that plays there, although he plays amazingly well, but it's someone that was there first to as let's try him because there is to see how he does. But overall, we believe that going to the end of the season, we feel we are in the right space with the right ingredients to do something good.
Now, Nedbank Cup last night, we saw Stellenbosch FC booking their spot in the quarterfinals with a 2-0 win over Polokwane City at the Dani Craven Stadium. And Chelsea manager Enzo Maresca confirming that Philip Jorgensen has replaced Robert Sanchez as their number one goalkeeper as he seeks to recover momentum in the Premier League. Spain international Sanchez has made a string of costly errors, including last month's 3-1 defeat at Manchester City. Now, Denmark's under-21 goalkeeper Jorgensen was picked to start in the 2-1 league win against West Ham earlier this month, but Sanchez was back in goal for last week's FA Cup defeat at Brighton. Maresca's team faces Brighton again tonight, says that Jorgensen is currently his first choice. In the meantime, semi-automated offside technology will be used in English domestic football for the first time during the fifth round of the FA Cup. The Football Association External announced that the technology will be used in 7 games taking place at the Premier League stadiums. And rugby, the Stormers are licking their wounds but ready to pounce as they face the Lions at Ellis Park tomorrow in the United Rugby Championship, fresh off a nail-biting 33-32 loss to the Bulls. The Cape side are looking to bounce back and climb from 10th on the URC table. The Lions are sitting 13th. They are desperate to rise up the ranks and avenge their 2010 defeat to the Stormers, and that was in December. And finally, golf. Denny McCarthy shot a 4-under par 68 to seize the lead at the PGA Tour's Genesis Invitational. This week's tournament is being played at Torrey Pines in San Diego because of the Los Angeles wildfires that destroyed much of the Pacific Palisades community around the historical home of the tournament, the Rivera Country Club. And that's where we leave it for now on the greens. More sports swinging at the top of the hour. For the morning brief, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. Tell me about once-off costs that are weighing on British American Tobacco's annual performance.
Now, the group reported a financial blow due to a long-running lawsuit in Canada. The company will take a £6.2 billion hit. The lawsuit, which has been ongoing for over a decade, relates to the health consequences of tobacco products. Bats, along with other tobacco companies, have faced scrutiny and pressure from anti-tobacco activism and stricter regulations globally. In addition to the Canadian lawsuit, British American Tobacco is also facing challenges in Australia and Bangladesh due to tax increases, which have impacted its tobacco business. Now, Chief Executive Tadeo Marocco said this will affect the company's performance this year, but despite the challenges, BATS expects its revenue to grow by around 1% in 2025, with performance weighted towards the second half of the year. The company is also confident that its investments will start to pay off by the end of the year, helping it achieve its targeted revenue growth of 3 to 5% by 2026.
And then let's talk about who is Iyoko. and tell me a bit about them and why they're shaking up their management team.
So Ayoko really taking New Year, New Me really seriously, Thulas.
You see, you're doing, sorry, you're doing that St. Catherine's, St. Martin's educated thing again. I said Iyoko, you go and Ayoko. Okay, go ahead. Ayoko then.
It's Ayoko, Thulas, and it was actually previously known as EOH. So this is the company we know that's now.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
They've handed the reins to two activist investors, Race Summerton and Dennis Venter. The move marks a shift in the company's strategy as it seeks to reclaim its former glory. Now, Summerton and Venter will be taking over from interim CEO Marius Del Rey, who's been in that position from last year. Meanwhile, Summerton and Venter joined the board in May 2024 and have been instrumental in various turnaround initiatives in the company as part of the board's restructuring committee. The shake-up in management comes alongside a trading update. Ayoko is forecasting an earnings jump of up to 290%. More detail on those numbers will be released on the 2nd of April when the group releases its financial statements. Now, both announcements were welcomed by the market as the share shot up 10.5% in yesterday's trading session. And over the past year, that share price has more than doubled, showing improved investor confidence.
All right, give us another roundup, please, of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
Kicking off in Asia, an AI tech rally really boosting certain indexes on that front, with the Hong Kong Hang Seng up 2.3% or 2.5% rather this hour, followed by a 0.2% rise in the Shanghai index. Over in the US, sentiment remaining positive as traders shrug off that hot CPI print we got earlier this week. Futures on that front are in the green. Then coming back home, things are quite different, with stocks subdued, the all share losing 0.1%, fueled by a 0.63% decline in the financial 15. And the rand in the meantime remaining between that 1840-1850 range against the dollar as sentiment turns a bit more positive on riskier assets.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you, and that's coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Sipho Mantula taking a bit of a breather today. Let's say good morning to Lerato Tsebe, who is an independent African researcher. Good morning to you, Lerato. Let's start with the return of the mortal remains of South African troops who died in the DRC. That happened last night.
Morning to you, Thulas, and morning to your listening. Yes, indeed, South African troops remains arrived in Pretoria last night at Air Force Base Swartkop. Those were the troops that died in active combat in Goma more than a week ago and have been in transit for over a week. The troops are part of the, as we know, the SADC mission in the DRC and lost their lives along with their counterparts from Malawi and Tanzania. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of Defence Angie Ramaphosa were both present at the reception last night after the remains had been flown in from Entebbe Airport in Uganda and were overseen with the process being handled by the United Nations throughout the entire repatriation process. There's no word yet as to when they will all individually be buried, but it has been confirmed that they will indeed each receive full military honours at their funerals.
Speaking of the DRC, it's one of the two situations that will be under the focus of the AU Peace and Security Summit. And you're saying this is happening at the heads of state and government level, so it's quite significant.
Yeah, Thulas, it's going to be a very busy weekend in Addis Ababa this weekend. We've got elections for AU Chair, but also we've got two very hot topics for the newly elected Peace and Security Council at the AU. There are two big agendas being Sudan and the situation in the DRC. The Peace and Security Council will be chaired by Equatorial President Theodora Obiang Masango, who's chairing the PSC for the month of February. Now, the representations made to the council today and potentially on Sunday, regarding the situation in the DRC will be made by Angolan President João Lourenço, who's the mediator of the Luanda process, Tanzanian President Samia Hassan, who's more than likely going to discuss the outcomes of the SADC EAC summit last week, again also discussing the situation in the DRC. President Ruto from Kenya, who's the chair of the EAC, and former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who's the facilitator of the EAC Nairobi-led process for peace in the Eastern DRC. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa will also be there, as well as the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Now, Thulas, interestingly enough, one head of state who will be markedly absent from this meeting is Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi, who will now be missing his third major meeting in a row. He was absent at the SADC meeting, he was absent at the EAC meeting, he was absent at the SADC and EAC meeting, and he will not be present at the AU summit, nor will he be present at the PSC meeting. He is rather electing to send his Prime Minister, Judith Tukula, instead. It is apparently alleged that President Tshisekedi is in Germany attending the Munich Security Conference.
Wow. Wow, no, you did not just say that to me, did you? Come on, Lira, are you serious? So, I mean, this in addition to last week he joined via virtual link, and you are saying this morning that he's chosen to go to the Munich security meeting in wow.
But I'm just as surprised as you are. I think public interface during such a heated political moment for the DRC is incredibly important. And I think that President Paul Kagame of Rwanda is scoring major political points just by showing up to these meetings. It's rather unfortunate for President Tshisekedi.
So let's move on then. The race for AU Commission chairperson is heating up, and you're telling me this morning that SADC has closed rank around a particular candidate, and that candidate is from Madagascar.
Yes, interesting letter coming out of the Executive Secretary of SADC, Mr. Elias Magosi. Seemingly sent out an email and or letter to foreign ministries throughout the region, firmly asking them to firmly support and close rank around SADC's candidates from Madagascar, Mr. Richard Randriamarato. Mr. Randriamarato is a former finance minister and former foreign affairs minister. He's an economist by training, and he's bidding against Djibouti's Mahmoud Yusuf and Kenya's Raila Odinga. Now, in the letter, the Executive Secretary states that there isn't really a need to convene an extraordinary Council of Ministers meeting, as there was already consensus last year in August around who SADC's candidate was. He was one of two candidates from the SADC region, with the other being Mauritius's Anil Gyan, who later withdrew her candidature. You must remember that the last time SADC had a chairperson emanating from the region was South Africa's Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma in 2012. However, we broke a unwritten rule, a gentleman's agreement, essentially stating that none of the big major economies or powerhouses, Nigeria, Algeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, would ever be able to put a chairperson nominate a candidate for chairperson of the AU. And that this rather should go to some of the peripheral countries, merely just, I believe, for a balance of power. But Mr. Randriamarato, hopefully, we'll see if he does or doesn't get it. We've had a rather interesting week this week in Addis with lots of elections, with Dr. Lerato Matebogo emerging victorious from South Africa. She won with an outstanding 41 of 49 votes for her portfolio, and is, to my understanding, the youngest commissioner at the African Union at present.
All right. Thank you for that. That's Lerato Tsebe, who is an independent African researcher standing in for Sipho Mantula and bringing you that Africa update.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're in the private security industry, and by switching to OUTsurance, we save 785 rand a month. It's an extra tank of fuel, it's extra reward money that we pay our officers. When it comes to insurance, OUTsurance is our security company.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Masandawana want to display their elite status with a graduation letter to the last 8. However, lower division team, Mpeni Home Defenders, are seeking to make history and join the league of giant killers. This is the Nedbank Cup Ross 16. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Mpeni Home Defenders on Sunday, 16 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Northwest Legislature Portfolio Committee on Community Safety and Transport Management, chaired by Honorable Freddy Sonakile, will host public hearings on Marine Oil Pollution Bill on the 14th February 2025 at Groot Mariko Community Hall in Ngakamudiri Molema District, Mogopa Community Hall near Venterstop in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District, Utlanang Community Hall at Christiana in Dr. Ruth Somuti Mompati, and Sutelong Community Hall in Bojanala District. All public hearings start at 10.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A reminder on top of all the usual traffic light outages in four ways. William Mandela and Sloane is offline this morning, and that's a key one. That backs you up over the highway on William Mandela into Bryanston down to the junction, and it backs traffic fairly severely on the highway, trying to turn off on William Mandela. That is just the latest of many traffic lights that continue to be out and be out for a long time around four ways. The N3 North, that crash at Van Buren, backlogging traffic out of Germiston now, but in the N12 is back to Four-Tracker Road as you come up to pick up the N3 towards Bedford. And a crash at Ormonde this morning on the Mike 1 North, holding traffic from Uncle Charlie's. A crash up by Liberty Mall on the N3 going north, so if you're leaving Pietermaritzburg on your way towards Town Hill, there's some disruption there. Another dreadful morning for traffic going out of Durban to Pietermaritzburg. A couple of things to note here. There's two stationary trucks around the Cliffdale-Hammersdale area. Big backlogs, because of course it's a construction zone. Big backlogs past Key Ridge and back towards Shongweni. And what happens, a lot of motorists tend to come off at Cassia Road from the N3 and try to sneak through up to the M13 and pick up some alternative routes, but there's a lot of construction on that Cassia Road, so the extra volume plus the roadworks plus peak hour just means that's a secondary major delay because of the N3 issues and the diversion volumes hitting that particular section. The rest of Durban, well, there's some traffic lights out this morning. South Coast Road and Blamey, so that's all quite heavy in the Clarewood area. Cape Town, a little bit lighter volumes on the highways this morning is noticeable, but I'll tell you an area that's got really busy since the university reopened is Stellenbosch. The R44 from the airfield all the way in. Adam Tuss, which is the extension, if you like, of the run out from Cales River, standing from Baden-Powell Drive all the way to central Stellenbosch, and the R44 coming in from Kayamandi quite heavy as well. Also, just in Cape Town, the R300 North, quite an unusual queue up to Old Powell Road, backlogs beyond Van Riebeek, and that's just holding you coming out of Cales River on Van Riebeek, trying to get into that R300 North. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing watching the game and then our team scored and the next thing you were gone.
Skis, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
The Buccaneers want to demonstrate that they are the reigning champions and nothing will stop them from marching on to the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Bakaga have a different game plan to return to Hampatele with happy faces.
This is the Nedbank Cup Plus 16.
Orlando Pirates FC tackles Baroka FC this Saturday, 15 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
A few of your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes now. Let's start with this one about the conversation we've been having about the National Health Insurance and the alternatives that are being proposed by a coalition of healthcare professionals.
Good morning, Mr. Simelane and your listeners. Happy Valentine's Day to you. This is Bonga Nkomazi. My question with regards to the NHI is that given the long history of corruption where our government and funds are concerned, how is this going to be any way different? Is this not going to be another ANC cash cow? That's just my question.
Yeah, no, a valid question. And I think those who are championing the implementation of the NHI will need to ensure that the safeguards are there and actually just build confidence in the system. Because the way I understand it, if you've got a centralized procurer, of healthcare services in the form of a fund, my thinking just likens it to what you have with the road accident fund, and then you talk about issues of governance when you have a fund like that. Valid question. Absolutely.
Good morning, Thulas. It's Alfred. You see, Thulas, in these countries, they opposing everything for the poor. The poor will never receive anything in this country. When we're talking about land, the rich opposes the blacks to get the land. When NHI comes, the poor, they are being opposed again. Thulas, we're living in different country in South Africa. Bye, Thulas.
Thank you for that. Yeah, interesting take on that. Just from a class perspective, the interests that are at play, according to that listener, are quite visible in who is opposed to the implementation of the NHI in its current form. Keep them coming. Let me take one or two of your calls, actually. Let me speak to Gary in Tshwane. Good morning to you, Gary. You want to talk to me about placements in schools this morning?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Thanks for taking my call and happy Valentine's Day to all your listeners and you.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Thank you. Thulasizwe, there's a big challenge when it comes to placement. I just moved to Pretoria East in December. I've been looking for schools. You contact these heads of department. They take you from one person to the other. Yesterday, I went to their office. There's no help at all. My son is out of school. I mean, it doesn't have school. It's mid-Feb now. No one shows any interest.
So as a result of not being able to have your child placed in a school, the child is actually sitting at home, not going to school.
Yes, no one is giving me an answer. I went to the office, these HOTs or whatever. They will send you to their offices to say, "Oh, go and speak to so and so." But unfortunately, when you get there, like those people, they don't seem interested. They don't see the agency of this.
Gary, don't drop the call. Please stay on standby. Let the team take your number, because I've had a situation like this before where someone then wanted to assist with that situation. I believe a situation like yours is one that either the Department of Education in Gauteng or the Public Protector should be able to step in and assist with a situation like that. Because what Gary describes there, the team will take your number there, Gary. What Gary describes is in exact violation of the new Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, which talks about ensuring that a child is in school for as long as needed to be in school. So the team will take your number, Gary. Please do stand by. Let me take a call from Mike in Newlands. Good morning to you, Mike. You want to talk to me about the Pretoria Girls School investigation?
Yes, Thulasizwe, I do indeed. I was a bit shocked to hear their name mentioned, because they have been found cleared of any racism whatsoever. Tava and Becky Foundation also found no racism within the school at all. So why their name should be brought up in this, I don't really know. But what worries me is about this is I never quite understood what this lady was going to exactly be doing. But if I can just mention something to Thulasizwe, perhaps you could get him on your show. His name is Richard Wilkinson. He is a well-known journalist. And let me just put out down what he has surmised for the reason Pretoria Girls High School is being caught up in this, is that there's various departments of court. One of them is called the Matthew Beniri School of Leadership, which is basically an agency of the ANC government. And what the ANC do is they identify a school with racism where it doesn't exist, and that's Pretoria High Girls. And you'll remember, if I could just quote Steve Mabono of the Gauteng Education Department. Listen to this quote. "We will act against racism even if there is no tangible evidence." Right. So now what the school does is they appoint some sort of body or commission. They go in there, they do some sort of training course based on who nobody knows what, teaching about racism that doesn't exist. They then send a bill to the Department of Gauteng Education for, let's say, I don't know, 200,000. This is all allegedly, of course. And then who gets that 200,000? Well, I'll tell you who gets it. Those are the people that put together the school. And you will be unsurprised to find out that they're all ANC members. So what we have here is a massive graft or grift, as they say, if the government has found another way to get hold of our money and give it back to the ANC. That's simply what this is, and this will be borne out by Richard Wilkinson, who has far more knowledge than me. Suffice to say, that lady you had on your show, I'm afraid, really, on what grounds do people,
Mike,
where there's no racism found,
just a quick question then, without getting caught up in the nitty-gritty of the Pretoria Girls High issue, is there no issue of racism in schools that deserves to be addressed, in your view, to warrant the kind of conversation I was having with my guest a bit earlier on?
You know, no. You see, you have to prove it first. We had Brackenfell down here in the Western Cape. We had the EFF drunk, running around causing absolute havoc, only to find out there was no racism. We had the Colony case, which was also highlighted as being a racist case. There was no racism. We had a pub down here, the Old Irish Pub. This poor guy went through hell and back, and there was no racism.
But Mike, what you're talking about are specific incidents that require, and I agree with you, that require a specific investigation. I'm saying as a phenomenon, does racism not exist and infiltrate into schools?
I would refer you to the IRR report, where it says racism is about 3% of the problem in South Africa. Racism is not our problem in South Africa at all, and that's wherever you go. It's an absolute nonsense created by this government to keep the race groups apart and separate us and rule by separation.
Well, I think the people who experience racism would beg to differ. But anyway, let's leave it there for this morning. Yes, you will. I believe you probably will hear from them. I hope you keep an open ear and an open mind. Thanks for that. That's Mike in Newlands there. That brings us to 8 a.m. Let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, political leaders urge to exercise patience in dealing with Eastern DRC situation and 4 suspected extortionists arrested in Kailicha. Good morning. Defence analyst Dean Wingren says it's crucial to make sure the South African soldiers that are still in the DRC are safe. Political parties have intensified their calls for the withdrawal of the SANDF members from the DRC. Last night, President Cyril Ramaphosa officially handed over the remains of the 14 South African soldiers killed in the DRC to their families at the Air Force Base Swartkop outside Pretoria. Wingren has advised political leaders to exercise patience in dealing with the volatile situation in the eastern DRC.
We all are rather impatient. We all want our troops home and safe. But I think we've got to exercise a little bit of patience, try and put some faith into our political leaders and in the foreign affairs and in the UN, which is also taking a leading role in trying to get our troops out of the immediate situation. And the only way to do that is via talk.
Meanwhile, President Ramaphosa says government takes seriously the concerns various MPs have raised over the deployment of SANDF members to the DRC. He, however, says South Africa has an important role to play in safeguarding peace in Africa.
We are a trusted country and a reliable country when it comes to peace building. We have succeeded in bringing peace and building peace in a number of countries on our continent. And yes, we have lost heroic soldiers in the course of doing so in many missions that our country has been and our soldiers have been involved in. This is one of those missions. The achievement of this vision is the most fitting tribute that we can pay to our fallen heroes and the greatest honor to their memories.
Police say they've arrested 4 suspected extortionists in Kailicha on the Cape Flats. Spokesperson Wesley Twig says officers made the arrests after receiving information on a vehicle with 4 occupants allegedly involved in extortion-related crimes in the area. Twig says the officers searched the vehicle and found an undisclosed amount of cash, which the suspects could not account for. The suspects are expected to appear in the Kailicha Magistrates Court after being charged. Some Johannesburg residents have taken to social media to complain about the water crisis in the city. In response, Johannesburg Water says it's looking into the matter. Yesterday, the DA in Gauteng called on the Infrastructure Minister, Dean McPherson, to consider including municipalities in the province in his infrastructure support program to tackle water infrastructure challenges. The party says the system status report Johannesburg Water published on Tuesday shows critical reservoir levels across multiple regions in the province. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has called for Western unity as a rift opens up between Europe and the US on how to end the war in Ukraine. Rutte was speaking in Brussels a day after the US Defense Secretary told NATO defense ministers that the Trump administration envisaged Ukraine giving up territory in exchange for peace. The US is also ruling out Ukraine joining NATO. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, says this amounted to appeasement.
We shouldn't take anything off the table before the negotiations have even started, because it plays to Russia's court and it is what they want. Why are we giving them everything that they want even before the negotiations have been started? It's appeasement. It has never worked.
Recapping the top story, defence analyst Dean Wingren says it's crucial to make sure the South African soldiers that are still in the DRC are safe. Political parties have intensified their calls for the withdrawal of the SNDF members from the DRC. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
It's the month for secret admirers, but it's no secret that with Outsurance, you could save big on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Monthly savings or cash in your pocket. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A reminder, traffic lights out in Pretoria, East Solomon, Mhlanga and Garsfontein. That is quite slow going in that part of town. Winnie Mandela and Sloane is just the latest traffic light failure in the four-ways area, and that's key because as you come off the highway southbound, you're turning into the traffic to Sloane, and northbound you've got to work across the traffic on the bridge that's being held up on Winnie Mandela. So the highway really sort of just sluggish to get off and to turn into Winnie Mandela. Maybe take an alternative off-ramp. The N3 north at Van Buren still there. Delays coming up from the cement factory. Stationary truck at Cliffdale in Chunga, that's still there. Big queues from Key Ridge. Big spillover this morning up the Cassia Road coming off the N3 towards M13. Of course, that is a work zone as well. Cape Town, if you use Baden-Powell Drive, just factor in some additional queues this morning approaching Strandfontein Road on your way to Muizenberg. And the N7's been very heavily back today. Looks like an issue around Beaufort Circle. The backlog towards Epping starts down at Vangate Mall. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. It is soccer news. Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso vowing his team will be playing with full commitment when they take on Limpopo ABC Motsepe League champions Impeni home defenders in a Nedbank Cup last 16 match. And in rugby, the Sharks, they are without their big names, but they're looking forward to taking on the Bulls this weekend. Details and more at around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 8 minutes after 8. We're into the third hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. It's good to be in your company. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Lots of conversations that we have started over the last 2 hours, but I do want to start here. Just at the top of 8, I took a call from Mike in Newlands. Let me start by saying I do not like the benefit of having a rejoinder after having ended a conversation with either a guest or one of our callers. But we were coming up for 8 a.m. and we were, heading up for news, etc. And it was clear that what Mike was saying required a bit more engagement than the time allowed. So he was talking about racism not being our problem in this country, not being a problem. He said something about 3%. It's 3% of the problems in this country, etc. I take every point that Mike was making, but I'm uncomfortable with the assertion that racism is not a problem in this country. And I did say that those who experience racism will be calling in and will be sharing their experiences. But why are we even teaching this in 2025? Why are we even still there? Because we've talked a lot about people expect racism to be someone coming up to you and calling you the K word. That still happens. You see it in videos from time to time. But that's not really the only domain of racism. We don't need to be teaching this in 2025, that there are other forms of discrimination that are based on race. There are those opportunities and conversations that are closed off simply on the basis that a person or an institution will simply not want to engage with you. There are instances and sectors in our economy where requirements for the job will be placed knowing very well that that will have the effect of limiting who can access those particular spaces. Why are we still needing to have this conversation? And I'm sorry to do this to you, Mike, after the conversation has ended, because I would have wanted us to engage, because that's the whole point of this show, that we sharpen each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. But on this one, Mike, I completely disagree with you on the question of racism not being a problem. I believe we need some level of empathy for people who experience discrimination, much of which is based on on a racial basis every day in various ways, overtly and in other ways as well. So yeah, that's just something I felt I needed to put out there because I could not really engage Mike on that. But feel free to engage me on that issue or any other issues for that matter. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
The Buccaneers want to demonstrate that they are the reigning champions and nothing will stop them from marching on to the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Bakaga have a different game plan to return to Hamphahlele with happy faces. This is the Nedbank Cup Last 16. Orlando Pirates FC tackles Baroka FC. This Saturday, 15 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the
Jazz lovers, the wait is over. Africa's grandest gathering returns on the 25th to the 26th of April at the Cape Town International Convention Center. Experience 2 nights of soul-stirring jazz, electrifying collaborations, and over 30 world-class artists across 4 iconic stages. Don't miss this unforgettable musical experience. Get your tickets now at ticketmaster.co.za. Brought to you by Independent Media, proud media partner of the Cape Town International Jazz Festival.
Whether you're having a morning or a morning, you woke up like this or like this. Mornings love McDonald's. So choose happy and enjoy a short filter coffee for only R14.90 at McDonald's. What's not to?
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, I'll take your calls in the next few minutes, but let me speak to my next guest now. A new program has been launched to equip primary school students with essential digital literacy and online safety skills. The initiative aims to provide crucial training for public schools that lack the financial resources for such programs, despite their students' extensive use of social media, gaming, and digital devices. Let's speak now to Dean McCubry, who is a social media expert and the founder of My Social Life. Good morning to you, Dean, and thank you for your time. So this is part of your My Social Life's Hero program. Tell me what it is that you are seeking to teach these young people about their presence and activity online as well as on social media.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in. Let me explain. So what we really want kids to do is we want kids to move through different phases if they have a device of any kind really in their hand. And the phases are, we want them to be safer, and then we want them to be smarter so that they can explore and then excel. So, for example, if we miss the safety step for kids, once they have a device in their hand, they then become at risk. And if you're at risk, then, of course, you suddenly find yourself in situations which can be, well, dangerous to you, but also can cause you breaches of privacy or violations of your identity, or even worse. So we need to teach them these foundational skills, and the best way to look at it is, once upon a time, and indeed still now, we teach kids literacy skills, and we teach them how to hold a pencil. There's a certain way to hold a pencil, and ideally we want them to use the right words. We're trying to get that now in a modern context with regards to devices. We want them to understand their settings, what external hacks look like, what type of behavior kind of traumatized adults can put on children, and so on. And this is the fundamental basics that kids need to understand now.
And I believe there's a particular reason why you are targeting public schools that lack the financial resources for programs that perhaps could be introduced in other schools to teach some of these skills.
Yeah, I've been doing this now for 7 years. I originally flew to New York to present my idea to the World Economic Forum and to the biggest safety company in the US called Common Sense Media. And I came back and I decided to do it. And I've been touring schools, tens of thousands of kids, teachers, parents, psychologists, and so on. And in doing that, it's been an amazing journey. But what I realized was it needs to have scale, and it needs to have reach, and it needs to have impact. Everybody needs to have access to this. But of course, at the beginning of a business, you don't have the money. And not that we're like rich now, but it's more the case that we have established structures and established lessons. And we decided it was time to really get help out to absolutely all types of school, not just even in South Africa, but further up into Africa as well.
So how do you teach cyberbullying prevention, as an example, to children in primary school, high school? How do you bring it down to their levels such that they understand it?
Well, it's very interesting. You know, if kids have access to a device, you'll actually find that they will have seen or experienced cyberbullying already. It's not like it's a new thing. And this is what's happened is post-COVID, kids have been shifted onto devices, that's in privileged schools. But even in underprivileged schools, people were at home and they were using their parents' devices, and they were joining chat groups, or they were playing on games and so on. And they've actually seen the engagements between humans and young humans. So they actually do identify with it. But how you approach it is you try to get them to understand that they have the power. First of all, they have the power to know that this doesn't feel nice, and that they also have the power to block somebody, report somebody. They have the power to turn the app off for 30 minutes. They have the power to turn the device off altogether. They have the power to talk to somebody and ask for help. And what they need to also understand is, why does this happen? Why do humans do this to each other? And so we help them to understand that actually this is often about shows of dominance or power. It can also be about insecurity and fear, and we show them ways. Like literally, when I'm live in class, I have tug of war battles with students. I pull them out, take my belt off, and we show this power struggle between people. And then I let go of the belt. And the person falls to the floor and they go, what was that about? And I was like, I don't want to play anymore. That's the same as turning your device off if someone is bullying you.
Wow, that's amazing. Dean, one of the things I didn't know is the potential for people to victimize children, even in spaces that many of us as parents understand to be safe spaces for children. So recently, someone flagged that, a platform like Roblox, for example, which I thought all along, surely it's only kids that are there. Actually, it turns out that it could be something that someone who has ill intentions could exploit. Those kind of things, the fun activities that children, like to engage in. How do you help them to have their guard up even as they are having fun in those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first thing is to let them know that there are indeed adults in those spaces. Let me tell you something about Roblox, and anybody can look this up. In the middle of last year, Roblox introduced an age bracket called 17 plus, and on the press release from Roblox, it says for darker experiences. Now, for anybody that doesn't know what Roblox is, it's kind of like a fantasy or a virtual realm or a virtual community, and there's tons of different rooms and realms and worlds that they can visit. It feels a little bit like a kind of live Lego to some degree, and like everybody kind of walking around in this 2D world. But what we need to do is understand that there are adults in there. And why would adults be in there? Some of them are just in there to have a good time, of course, but then there are others because they actually want to engage with children. And some of them want to dominate children. They want to make them feel bad, and they want to make them feel scared, and some of them want to contact them. And so we explain that to them, and we use a whole manner of ways to say, if you were wandering around in your local shopping mall, you need to now imagine what that would look like if that were happening in the shopping mall. If somebody was just able to come up and talk to you, and how weird you would find that. But you don't find it weird behind a screen. And they say, yeah, that's because that person can't get to me. But I'm like, but they can still get inside your head, or they can still ask where you live, and so on. And we're not seeking to terrify kids. This is what's really important. Our kids have to end up living online. And in fact, we need to empower them to live online because they're going to be competing with AI. That's what we really need to start to show them.
Lastly then, Dean, this whole Hero program, tell me a bit more about it. It's offered for free, you say, to pupils in underserved communities.
100%. Yeah, there's no strings attached here, really. It's just a case of been doing it for a long time, and I would love people to be able to get access to it. If people want to find out more about it, it's a set of video lessons. It also comes with a lesson plan. Okay, so video lessons meaning about 60 minutes of video that can be played in a classroom if you have access to the internet and can show it on a screen. It comes with a downloadable lesson plan. So you literally hit download and it takes you through step by step. Then you say this to the kids. Then you have a breakout for them to discuss this between them. Then you go back to the video again. It's like really easy. And even at the end, there's a fun quiz that the teacher can take kids through, or they could even turn it into a life orientation exam or assessment, for example, but just printing it out and giving it to their kids to see if they've engaged with it. So that's what it is a video training program, and people can find that on www.mysociallife.com. And mysociallife.com with one L, and then they would use the word /inclusion because it's an inclusive program. But they'll be able to find it if they get to mysociallife.com.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. That's Dean Makubri there, who is a social media expert and the founder of My Social Life. It sounds to me like something that we should, at the very least, just check out those video lessons that Dean was mentioning. I mean, recently, my 8-year-old daughter was explaining cyberbullying to me, and she was talking about, if someone takes your bad results, if you had a bad grade in a test and then they take that and they post it online, that's cyberbullying. So it's at their level that they understand it. But I believe that as parents, we should also be trying to understand more how to teach and explain these concepts to young minds.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take some of your calls this morning. Let me start with Lorna in Eqonce. Good morning to you, Lorna. You want to talk to me about concerns about the South African Social Security Agency?
Yes, Thulasizwe, good morning to you. Thulasizwe, I've got a complaint here. My husband went to go and file for his pension on the 23rd of September last year, 2024. Until now, he hasn't got his money yet, and he's 60 years. Then he was 60 years then. It's going for 61 in September again. So they've been sending him up and down. They first said to him on the 23rd of September, it was on a Monday, that the system has changed, and they asked for his phone number, and then they said they're gonna send him an SMS to tell him what to do. That was in September. Came October, and then he went there again, and then they told him it's still the same. He must wait. The system has changed.
Sure.
And then every time when you go there, they tell him a different story. And then he went in November. Then they said that he must wait because everything has been is in the system. He must just wait for his money. But the person who must sign off the money isn't there yet.
Sure. Wow.
Because it's a lot of money. And then you waited. You went again in December. Same story again. The person that's supposed to sign off the money, because it's a lot of money, he isn't there. The person is on leave.
Sure.
Then you went again in January. In January, they told him that he must wait. They're going to give him a call.
And you're still waiting until
now. And then the pay here in pay now.
Lorna, let me ask
February.
you. Lorna, let me ask you to hold on the same way that I did with the previous caller. Don't drop your number, your phone, your call right now. The team will take your details. It sounds to me that there are patterns emerging of service delivery failures around which we might want to have a more extensive conversation with the public protector and possibly have the public protector field one or two calls over the coming days and weeks, because there's a theme that I've picked up over the last few weeks of similar calls like the one we just got from Lorna. Let me take a call from David in Pietermaritzburg. Good morning to you, David. You want to respond to Mike in Newlands, who called a bit earlier on.
Yeah, to the privileged Mike. He can't detect for us. We are black people. We are the victims. Mike is one of the people that are complicit when it comes to the issue of racism. As you've correctly put it, it's not only being attacked, but it's also the issue of exclusion. If you go to most former model C schools, you find that black teachers are there to only teach isiZulu. I did ask one of the principals where my son used to attend the school, I've noticed that most black teachers here, if not all, are teaching isiZulu. So does it imply that if isiZulu is not being taught, so it will mean there will be no a black teacher in the school? So that's part of exclusion that is being experienced by black people. Another thing that I want to find out, you talked about the findings of some panel there at Pretoria Girls High School as to who were part of that panel.
Yeah.
Because for me that is important, because we know that if it only comprises white, so you know the verdict or the findings of that,
David,
obviously will favor the racist, because racism still exists and it largely exists now. We're experiencing it as black people.
Gotcha. David, thank you. I've got nothing to add to what you've said there, David, but as far as the panel is concerned, I think it was done by Mdladlamba attorneys. I remember the report being presented and the debate that then ensued after that report was tabled. But thank you for that. That's David in Pietermaritzburg. Rex in Leidenburg, good morning to you. You will want to talk to me about racism.
Yeah, I phoned in a couple of times and I've challenged Professor South All, I've challenged Oakley Smith. The whole problem with dealing with racism is that it is based on fixing other people. Now, all the textbooks, all the scriptures will tell you that you cannot fix other people, period. If you could fix other people, then marriage would be easy. You fix each other before you get married and you live happily ever after, but reality is not like that. So if you accept that you cannot fix other people, and this whole thing is about fixing white people, then where do you take the debate from there? And if you say you can fix other people, then I'd say to you, tomorrow morning, bring one person on radio that you fixed recently and explain to the whole medical profession that, how you fixed each other. You can bring your wife, your kids, anybody. Okay, now what I would like to see is a panel of experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, throw in a Buddhist monk or two, because the Buddhist monks have got they've been studying the subconscious mind for about 2,000 years. And they've got as good as working knowledge as anybody on how the mind works. It is a problem of the mind. And it's just become one big political racket because things are falling apart in this country. And everybody is blaming everybody, and you're going round and round. And if you want to be part of the solution, then you're going to have to take this whole debate to the next level. It is a problem of the mind, and until you understand how the mind works, you will never, ever, ever solve the problem. It's just one big political racket.
All right. Thank you for that, Rex. I have nothing to add, as I said. I did air my views about what Mike and Newlands had to say on issues of racism, but thank you for that input. Let me take one or two other voice notes, and let's hear what you've had to say about this issue.
Morning to us. I would like to say that somebody who hasn't experienced racism will say there is no racism. Someone who has received privilege all his life won't acknowledge the fact that he's privileged or racist. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. And I think that's the point I was making a bit earlier on, to say just a bit of empathy and say, I have not experienced it myself because perhaps of the position, of my position in life and who I am in South African society. But to then, dismiss it altogether was rather unfortunate on the part of Mike. 8:30, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the South African Human Rights Commission says it's investigating Gauteng's online learner placement system. Its provincial office is inundated with complaints of unplaced learners for the 2025 academic year. Defence analyst Dean Wingren says it's crucial to make sure that the South African soldiers that are still in the DRC are safe. Political parties have intensified their calls for the withdrawal of the SNDF members from the DRC. And US President Donald Trump has blamed his predecessor for the Russia-Ukraine war. Trump was taking questions in the Oval Office when he blamed former President Joe Biden for opening the door to the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow getting from Germiston to Galulis along the N3. It's an earlier crash been with us all morning at Van Buren. That's why it's so slow. N1 south to off-ramp at Winnie Mandela is quite heavy. Traffic lights off as you turn onto Winnie Mandela. It's Sloane. I think there's a crash just by the off-ramp there as well. Lights are out Solomon, Mshlangu and Gaasfontein. That remains really busy in Pretoria East. Durban, a crash at Blue Lagoon. If you're on your way in from Mshlangu, that's quite slow. And that stationary truck up at Cliffdale, in Chunga, Cliffdale and Chunga on your way to Hammersdale. Very heavy queues, big backlogs again from the Shongweni exit. It is really, really worth checking before you travel any time of the day these days. Durban, Pietermaritzburg, you can run into a stationary truck, one lane open, and a delay of anything between 45 minutes and an hour. That's why it's certainly worth checking. Cape Town, Strandfontein area, Baden-Powell Drive. You're going to be asked to queue up this morning on your way through to Muizenberg, just approaching the Strandfontein Road junction on Baden-Powell. Marine Drive, Milnerton, Parton Island, staying busy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you once again. The beauty of the Nedbank Cup, right, is that it can produce these fixtures that you never could imagine in a lifetime. Who are Mpeni home defenders, and why is the Sundowns coach warning that there should be no slip-ups when they face them?
Do you remember TS Galaxy, how they rattle Sundowns? So I think they're going on that because this is like an amateurs versus all-stars, David versus Goliath. And I mean, home defenders with a name like that, who knows, they could be building a wall that Sundowns just may not be able to break. This is the Nedbank Cup till last round of 16, all happening at Lucas Moripa Stadium. Sundown coach Miguel Cardoso says his team will show full respect to the only amateur side left in the tournament. But again, coming off on the back of that loss to TX Galaxy, Sundowns are still fresh and they know that they will have to come out firing against a team known as the Underdogs. It kicks off at 3 p.m. and you can catch the action live on SABC Sport. More local soccer. It's been 13 years since Orlando Pirates last secured a treble, and this season they present a significant opportunity for them to achieve this feat. Pirates have already won the MTN 8 title. They remain strong contenders for three major trophies, the league title, the CAF Champions League title, and the Nedbank Cup title. Their coach, however, believes it's still early to focus solely on the title race.
Personally, I think it's still early to speak about titles. We are again, we're going through now the rest of the month, these 15 days of February, March. We will be tested again in different competitions. The Champions League will come after the FIFA break, if I'm not wrong, in the middle of March. We're trying to look at every game like an opportunity, seriously, an opportunity to win, to showcase the players' talent, to make sure that we are at the level that this project requires.
More soccer news, this time women's soccer. JVWFC new acquisition. Puleng Moremi says she's excited to be part of the club ahead of the 2025 Hollywood Bet Super League season. Moremi is part of 6 new signings announced by the club, including former TS Galaxy defender Aaron Hurst and the midfielder Bonolo Makoma, who've been promoted from their development team. Here's Moremi.
Very happy. I'm very excited to be joining JVW. The team is very motivated to do better than how they did last season. This is a team that is also full of players that constantly want to do well for themselves and for the club as a whole. So it's been a great journey so far.
Rugby, the Sharks may be missing big names like Sia Kolisi and Ox Incher, but backline coach Dave Williams says they've got enough bite to challenge the Bulls. That's tomorrow at Loftus in the URC. The Durban side's bench looks thin on experience, but their starting pack, including Bongi Mbonambi and Trevor Enyakane, will aim to match the Bulls' powerful forwards. Meanwhile, the Bulls coach Jake White will count on his fresh legs off the bench and the dreaded high-felt altitude to overpower the Sharks in the final 20 minutes. It's going to be a classic north-south derby with everything on the line. And tennis action, we've got some special tennis news. Argentina's Maria Navon upsetting the second seed Holger Rune of Denmark in straight sets to reach the Buenos Aires quarterfinals. 6-1, 7-2 was the scoreline, and Diego Schwartzman's playing career came to a close. The 32-year-old was disappointed. He went down to Pedro Martinez at Buenos Aires 6-2, 6-2. And in the ladies' tournament, the American Amanda Anisimova has outlasted Ukraine's Marta Kostyuk 4-6, 7-5, 6-4 at the Qatar Open. And Yelena Ostapenko taking her revenge on the Tunisian Ons Jabeur for her first-round loss in Abu Dhabi last week with a 6-2, 6-2 win in the quarterfinal of the Qatar Open. And that's how we wrap up your sport. Smashing your way at around 12:30 is John Hedeka with more sport. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. Let's start with, we're building up to the budget speech, are we not? And there's a bit of inputs that are coming in from various sectors. Tell me about what Nedbank has had to say about the importance of infrastructure capital expenditure.
That's right, Thulas. And in its findings from the Capital Expenditure Survey, it says in 2024, projects ticked higher, totaling 445.9 billion rands. That's up from 210 billion rands in 2023. And this was largely driven by government and state-owned enterprises, which accounted for nearly 80% of total value when it comes to projects. And while this increase is a positive sign for the country's fixed investment spending, experts warn that more needs to be done to stimulate economic growth, with Nedbank saying investment spending needs to be doubled or tripled to have a meaningful impact. The survey also highlights the challenges faced by South Africa's infrastructure development, with replacement projects accounting for 61.2% of public sector listings. This reflects the backlog in infrastructure, particularly in road and water systems. Now, according to a Business Day article, to address these challenges, Infrastructure SA is providing a one-stop shop to streamline project approvals, which can currently take up to 3 years. And the Gauteng provincial government is working to modernize its project delivery process to improve efficiency and reduce unspent funds. So overall, while the increase in capital projects is a step in the right direction, the country still faces challenges in stimulating economic growth and addressing its infrastructure backlogs.
So I'm learning when I'm telling that sometimes I overreact to some of the updates you give as far as various sectors of the economy are concerned. Tell me about mining production declining in December. Should I be overreacting and overly concerned or not?
I think you should, considering that the manufacturing sector also declined in the fourth quarter. So this then having a negative impact on GDP for the fourth quarter. And we come from a quarter where we saw contraction already. So what does that then spell out for the fourth quarter? We'll see in the next few weeks or so. So the sector taking a hit at the end of last year, with production falling 2.4% year-on-year in December, driven mainly by a 7.1% decline in PGM output due to low prices. Gold production also dropped 8.4% year-on-year, its 14th consecutive monthly decline. Now, production for the whole of last year came out 0.4% higher, following a 0.1% increase in 2023 and a 7.8% decline in 2022. While there's a steady improvement in the yearly performance, the Mineral Council's chief economist Hugo Pinar says the weak end to last year means that the mining sector will subtract from GDP in the fourth quarter. Pinar also added that the sector still has a long way to go to recover from the large production slump of 7.8% during 2022. Despite PGMs weighing on the print, there were some bright sparks. December saw a welcome boost in coal production, which rose 2.5%, while sales surged 11.6%, making coal the top contributor to December's sales. Manganese miners also delivered a strong performance, with manganese ore production jumping 8.7% during the same period. Now, these gains help offset declines in other sectors.
Lastly then, Dowling, what kind of a Friday can we look forward to on the markets?
Local markets likely to rebound today as sentiment improves. Thulas, in terms of updates, traders will wake up to news from automotive parts firm Metair and engineering group Avenge. The rand, in the meantime, holding steady at 18.47 to the dollar this hour. And then moving over to Wall Street, futures are in the green following yesterday's upbeat close. Lastly, in Asia, markets on track to end the week mixed, with the exception of the Hong Kong Hang Seng, as it benefits from a Chinese AI rally, with more investors betting on Asian tech counters.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lichela. Ndauling, have yourself a fantastic weekend. She has kept you... Yeah?
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling there. She's kept you updated on business, the economy, and the markets over the last 3 hours.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection, and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady, and you are my man.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
17 minutes to 9. The Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union, POPCRU, has responded to a proposal which suggests rotating police officers and station commanders across police stations to curb corruption within the South African police services. The proposal was made by the Gauteng Community Safety Portfolio Committee chairperson, Dr. Bandile Masuku, this week. POPCRU has raised some concerns about the practical challenges that this could pose. Let's speak now to Richard Mamabolo, who's the spokesperson of POPCRU. Good morning to you, Richard, and thank you for your time. So the way I understand it, it's a two-pronged proposal from Dr. Bandile Masuku. Let's start with the element that talks to trying to break any familiarity developing between station commanders, police officers, and criminal gangs and syndicates within a locality, and therefore suggesting that you need a rotation system to be in place. What's your response to that?
Good morning to you and the listeners. Yeah, look, we always welcome ideas and initiatives that aim to curb crime, but you remember as well that I think part of the consistent calls that we have been making, and of course the reason why we have a police service is such that we build good working relations between communities and police. Now, in an instance where you have police rotating, it would mean therefore that police would not get used to the kind of, or build relations with the very communities that they are supposed to serve. But that's on the one hand. On the other hand, it would be practically impossible to continue with the rotation process because as things stand currently, a lot of police have got a lot of challenges. You know, the burden will come to them to actually find alternative accommodation from time to time. And, we know that our police officers, a majority of them are backyard dwellers. And of course, in most cases, they use public transport to go to work, which has made them vulnerable to criminals. So we need to look into how we then deal with the uneven allocation of resources across police stations, especially those when you compare those within townships and the ones within suburban areas. The ones in townships have got far lesser resources. And that, of course, is part of what makes them not to be sufficiently effective. So before considering this move, which would make police rotate, we'd rather focus on ensuring that they are well resourced. And Gauteng, by the way, has been one of those which lack a lot of resources. You find that a lot of vehicles have been serviced for over 6 months, and you go to any police station currently, on a night shift, you find that there are probably 4 officers working with only limited vehicles. Now, when there are call-outs for communities call out police, especially at night, it becomes difficult for them to be everywhere. So those are part of the things that we need to immediately deal with. The rotation part, I think it's just something which is not workable, considering that the cost would obviously be on the police themselves.
Then the other element has to do with introduction of body cameras to increase accountability for police actions. What's your take on that particular aspect?
Yeah, look, we do welcome that. I think it goes both ways, really. It's not necessarily only solely about ensuring that police are observed, but it's also about police themselves actually having sufficient evidence as and when they go to crime scenes. We believe that this would obviously ensure that, when people are arrested and they go to the courts, there would be sufficient proof to actually verify the stories that, the charges that police put amongst those people. So that is something which we welcome. But again, remember that just last year we had an initiative in Gauteng specifically wherein there were drones introduced to fight crime. As far as we have learned, there's only one drone working. So the practicality of that actually materializing really depends on resources as well, which is one of the challenges that we've been having nationally, wherein budgets are cut. You know, the austerity measures that have been put in place have had a negative impact on the kind of work that police would like to do, because we speak to the management on a regular basis and of course we agree on a number of issues, but when it comes to actually materializing some of the agreements, budgetary constraints have always been a problem.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. Richard Mamabulo is the spokesperson of the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union, POP Crew.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Zoom in on Bedford View and get you an update on the N3. It's been a problem this morning. It's taking forever to clear a crash near Van Buren Road. Traffic coming out from Germiston past Cement Factory through Heldenace remains heavily backed up. The Mike 1 this morning from Melrose down to the Houghton Drive exit on your way through to Central Joburg remains fairly slow. And those lights, Solomon, Mshlanga and Garsfontein out, still causing problems. Pretoria East, still with that broken down truck just after Cliffdale. It's a massive delay of traffic. I mean, you get just past Shongweni and then it becomes stationary all the way through Cliffdale, up Key Ridge, through Cliffdale and on your way towards Inchunga. Behind that, the M13 backs from Cassia, and the Cassia Road takes a lot of diverting volumes, if you like, off the N3, trying to get up alternative routes through that Hillcrest area. And of course, the Cassia Road M13 has been a construction zone for a long time, so all of that extra traffic causes delays there. The idea, the way to approach it, Durban to Pietermaritzburg these days, check before you travel. If there's drama at Cliffdale, which there always is, off-ramp back at Pinetown, the Richmond Road or Paradise Valley, and just go straight up Fields Hill, down through Cliff, take that old road up through Boorters Hill and Drummond. Cape Town this morning, still fairly busy on the N1 highway inbound from Century City to the CBD, but it's generally an easier morning all round. And this weekend, just a quick one, if you're in Cape Town on Sunday, it's the Peninsula Marathon. Runners largely along the main road route coming out of Greenpoint all the way down to Simonstown, so there will be some closures and restrictions Sunday along that part of Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Yeah, let's take some of your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes. I'm starting to think that it is impossible to end the show without talking about you know who.
Morning, it's Nasima Mohammed from Durban. I find it fascinating that Mike from Newlands makes allegations against the ANC for lying about racism, yet he totally supports Trump about Trump's lies about South Africa and the Land Restitution Act, as he supports the US and Israel with lies against other countries. Thanks.
Yeah, you see what I mean? How that name, Donald Trump, is even getting weaved into, woven is the word, getting woven into conversations about what's happening in our country. Thank you for that. Let me take a few that have to do with the developments we reported earlier on about the situation in Ukraine and the possibility of negotiations and conversations between Donald Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Good morning, this is Derek from Mklanga talking about Russia-Ukraine conflict. The fact that Russia invaded a sovereign country, and if they are able to keep their gains in terms of land, I think that is shocking, and I think it's wrong of Trump. Putin is a dictator. His opposition gets put in jail, if not killed. And here, our new Trump, USA president, is siding with Russia or sympathizing with Russia over and above Ukraine, who was invaded by Russia. I think it's shocking. I think Russia should get the hell out of Ukraine and leave the land that they took over. Otherwise, Ukraine is entitled to keep that Kursk area that it's taken over as well.
Yeah, I think Trump always made it clear that he would leverage a relationship that he believes he has with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And from that statement that I was looking at from the Kremlin, they are also talking about actually inviting Trump to come through to Russia, to Moscow and visit, etc. And Trump trades on that and being able to negotiate a deal, especially where he believes he's got a strong relationship. But I hear what you are saying about the possible terms, including Ukraine possibly having to live with the reality that they may not gain back some of the territory lost during the war, something that Volodymyr Zelensky is absolutely rejecting, that there can be a deal negotiated without his participation.
Good morning, this is Derek from Mklanga.
Sorry about that. We took that one. Let me take this last one that has to do with the issue of medical aids. We've been discussing the proposals around the NHI that are being put forward by a group of professional healthcare practitioners.
Hi, this is Muzi. Essentially what he's saying is he doesn't have any solutions. His solution is medical aids have been ripping us off, and then they should continue to ripping us off. So the NHI, it's to prevent that from happening, because it doesn't make sense whereby you contribute towards a medical aid, yet the treatment is less than your contribution, but you still have to pay an additional fee that they don't cover. It doesn't make sense. Let the NHI be implemented.
All right, thank you for that. And I think some of what you said, some of it echoes what the health minister has been saying about the levels of coverage provided or not provided in some instances by medical aid schemes. So it does seem like we have quite a complex conversation to have around the implementation of the National Health Insurance. In fact, let me take a call from Temba in Gqeberha, also on the same theme of the NHI. Good morning to you, Temba.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Thulasizwe, this specific group of professional health professionals are hypocrites.
How so?
They are hypocrites because they are quick to fight and explain their rights of deploying their own trade and practicing as doctors as it flows from the Constitution of the Republic.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? They turn around. They want to hold hostage the high earners in the country. They are defining them as high earners. That they be locked up in medical aids and they be not allowed to opt out. That's where they are hypocrites, because a certain group of people must be bound and locked up by a specific law, but they themselves, they do not want that to be applied to them.
I see what you're saying. They don't want to be bound by a specific law, in this case, the NHI Act.
They do not want to be bound by that. They are quick to point us to a constitution in terms of their rights to ply their trade.
Temba, thank you for that. That's Temba in Gqeberha. Let me take a call from Sergio in Johannesburg. Sergio, good morning. You are the Shadow MEC of Education in Gauteng. You want to respond to my conversation with MEC Chilwane a bit earlier on.
Yes, so I only got the last couple of minutes of it. So basically my concern is that when the Gauteng Department of Education, through the MEC's office and through his spokesperson, says to the media that they've made 4,000 satellite schools available to alleviate the overcrowding, when in fact, and it's come across now in further media questioning, that there isn't 4,000 satellite schools and only 15 are going to be built this year. So it's a lie from the MEC's office and directly from them. The problem that we have in Gauteng is that many of our schools are overcrowded, and it's continuously getting bigger with the increase of admissions that is taking place in schools.
Yeah. You did hear, though, Sergio, that he says he never promised 4,000 satellite schools. He promised that with the various interventions, there would be 4,000 classrooms that are provided.
Well, that's the thing. You know, when you tell the media that you've made 4,000 satellite schools available, then you change your tune to say that you're going to make X now. And only 15 is going to be available in Gauteng. The question is, why are they lying? Why are they trying to deviate from the problem that we have of overcrowding in Gauteng?
All right, I've got to thank you for that call. That's Sergio in Johannesburg. Let me take a call from Vuyo in Cosmos City. Good morning to you, Vuyo. You want to respond to Mike in Newlands, the call I took a bit earlier on.
Morning, Thulas. Yes. I would like to respond to Mike. Mike is honestly, for the sake that we are on radio, I'll just not say this line, but I won't say the full thing, but he must pull his head out of, and then I'll just leave it there. Because honestly, I feel like he's speaking from a point of white privilege. You can't say that it's 3% of the problem in South Africa, where it's a daily issue. You can't, you don't open the news or open the TV and you don't hear about racism. And also, I think the point that you were saying that in schools, racism exists. I mean, racism does exist because kids mirror what they see from their parents. And I'm pretty sure that Mike's kids will also mirror what he's doing now, that this point of white privilege. I've seen first-hand experience of racism in schools. So I've experienced that. I'm talking from a point of what's the word? I've experienced it. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, Vuyo, thank you for that. That's Vuyo in Cosmo there weighing in on his own experience. And this is what I said, that those who live the reality of racism continuing to exist and continuing to be a problem in South African society will come forward and share their experiences. Sammy in Cape Town, good morning. You want to talk to me about what? The Africa update that we do on the show?
Yes, Mr. Simelane, thank you. This is Sammy in the Western Cape. The DRC is in many of African institutions, including SADC and Eastern African Community, but none of these institutions have condemned Rwanda aggression to the DRC. No country, no institutions have taken any firm stance against the Rwandan army in the DRC. Tell me one country other than South Africa have condemned Rwanda. None. So these some.
Aye, Sammy, I don't know what happened there. We lost that call to Sammy so abruptly, just as he was getting into his stride and making his point. I'm terribly sorry about that, Sammy. I was going to say in my engagement with you before we lost the call to you there, Sammy, I was going to say that I did see the arguments that were being presented before the African Court on Human and People's Rights in the case that has been brought by the DRC against Rwanda. And I've got a great deal of respect for the work that is done by institutions such as those. They don't have policing powers. They can't enforce their own orders, but I always say that it is a noble body of law, particularly in the African context, right? Where Africans themselves, not waiting for institutions that are European that we will later criticize and say they are targeting Africans, etc., on our own, agreeing that this we will accept, this we will not accept, and these are the platforms. If you are aggrieved by the conduct of one of the states, you come to an institution like the African Court on Human People's Rights. Whether that's sufficient for what you were saying, Semi, I don't know, because we simply lost the call to you there. But thanks for that call. Stembiso, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about schools this morning?
Yes. I'm staying in Centurion. What I've taken is to assist the department every January in terms of the admission. I think one of the things that we need to acknowledge that some of us as members of SGBs in schools, we contribute in this issue of overcrowding in schools. There are some schools that have been closed in locations. The challenge is that some of the SGB members, the parent component, most of the time they want to use SGB as a business transaction. When money goes in, they don't manage schools properly. The other thing that we need to deal with is that schools are not managed by the department, are managed by SGBs, including employment of principals and teachers, because they are the ones that interview the principals. So if we say the education is going down, who's supposed to be blamed? Let's not.
And
the SGBs.
Stakeholders must take accountability.
Yeah, so that's why in the town, the schools are overcrowding because of some parents are contributing into that issue.
Stembiso, thank you for that. That's an important level of detail from someone who has the lived experience of some of these factors that contribute to overcrowding in our schools. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point with Kethi Mutlahlana is up next here on SAFM after the news. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.